Meeting. We have a full agenda. You're at the November 14th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, in case you're in the wrong spot, but we'll go ahead and start with a roll call.
Garner.
Here.
Miller. Staffer.
Here.
Turner. Kehoe.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Kirkman.
Here.
Selman.
Here.
Van Acker.
Here. Thank you. We'll go now. Let's have Rodney with a report on council actions and communications.
Good evening. We had a pretty straightforward meeting. The last public hearings for City Council, November 6th. So the first one was for 208 East Barbara Street, and this was a variance for the sign height for Jackson, a gas station off of North Side and the freeway. And they requested a larger sign and a taller sign, and that was granted. The next one was, again, another one, but off of Franklin Boulevard and the freeway, and that was for another Jackson's, and that was also granted for another larger and bigger sign. The next one was for an annexation and zoning to RS6 at 812 West Greenhurst Road, and this was for connection to city water services, and that was granted. You had recommended approval. The next one was for 3814 Airport Road and 315 North 39th Street. This one's just the one directly north of the Warhawk Air Museum that you recommended approval of that one for rezone to IL, and that was approved by council. And then the last one was for a commercial development off of Karcher Road near Target. You had recommended approval of that one, and that one was also approved. And that's all I have.
That's it. Thank you. And I will entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda unless there's any discussion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Kehoe, seconded by Kirkman to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries. That's adopted. And now we'll move on to public hearings this evening. We have 5 tonight, I think, if I counted right. 5, yep. So just to go over kind of the process this evening, we will have the applicant come up. Please state your name and record, name and address for the record, and then they'll have 7 minutes to present their project and what they want to do. Then city staff will present the staff report that we have in front of us this evening that includes all the documentation and whatnot that we've all reviewed. They have unlimited time because they're in charge. And then we will take public testimony on each item. And when you come up, you should have signed up back. If you haven't signed up with Parker and you'd like to speak on an item this evening, go see Parker. He's in the blue back there, and he'll get you signed up for, against, or undecided for the record. And come up, state your name and address for the record at the microphone. You have 3 minutes to provide your testimony and get your questions asked or concerns addressed. And then we will bring the applicant back up after everybody has provided testimony. They'll have 5 minutes to rebut the testimony or answer questions, and then we will close the public hearing, deliberate amongst the commission up here, and render a decision on each item. So that's the process. Looking forward to a good meeting, and we will start with the first item this evening is a development agreement modification. The ordinance number 3683 and master plan community for a mixed-use development with commercial, single-family, detached, and attached residential uses. Zoning map amendment from RS 8.5 to 2.76 acres of BC, 25.63 acres of RML, 18.54 acres of RS4, and 26.99 acres of RS6 zoning districts subdivision preliminary plat for Haltom Heritage subdivision on 3 parcels totaling 73.92 acres on Elm and Prescott for Trilogy Development. Sean Brownlee for 286 single-family detached and attached townhouse dwelling units, 1 commercial lot, and 46 common lots. Linden Road will also be extended through the site, providing an east-west connection between Franklin Boulevard and Prescott Lane. That's a mouthful, and Trilogy, thanks for doing about every action item we can think of tonight. So, is the applicant here? Okay, come on up, state your name and address, and the floor is yours.
Good evening, Chairman Van Acker and members of the commission. My name is Bonnie Layton with NV5, representing the application this evening. My address is 690 South Industry Way, Meridian, Idaho, 83642. And I want to thank you for your time this evening, as well as staff's time in helping us develop this application. And tonight I'm here to bring forward our project, which is 73.92 acres. It's a master plan community. We have a component of commercial, 286 dwelling units, 20% open space, and a density of 4.13 units per acre.
Sorry to interrupt. Do we have a timer somewhere? Is it on? Okay, I don't see it, but okay.
And then, okay. So again, just to review the history of this site. So initially, this property was annexed into the city of Nampa back in 2007. And then the market downturn hit. So this property has remained in the city limits, but undeveloped since that time. We have worked with staff over the last couple of years to develop an application that we believe is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and the future land use map. And so tonight we are requesting a DA modification as well as a rezone to reflect the current vision for the city, and that necessitates that request. So this slide will show you on the left what the future land use map and designations looked like back in 2007, and how the city's vision for this area, as well as the entire city actually, has really evolved since that time. On the next slide, you'll see a closer up version of this. So initially, back in 2007, this area was envisioned very differently to what the current vision is, to have a mix of uses and densities and zoning classifications for the area. So we're really trying to be consistent with what the vision is for the city at this time. This is a growth and development area. I've actually spliced the city of Caldwell as well as the city of Nampa together to kind of see the blue dashed line is the area of city impact. So as Nampa is growing out and up, Caldwell is also growing to the east. And so the redevelopment or expansion of Highway 2026 is really changing the activity in the area, as well as some of the major east-west corridors in the entire area. The master transportation plan, I felt like this was important to note. Of course, we've got Highway 2026, which is just a mile north of this site, actually less than a mile. Linden Road, which is a main east-west collector, and then North Franklin Boulevard that runs north-south along our western boundary. This slide is to show exactly where we are located in relation to some of those major transportation thoroughfares. Franklin Boulevard is a principal arterial. Linden is designated as a minor arterial. So it's really anticipated that this will be a very busy area, and developing density and commercial services to support the whole area is important. I took this slide from the Highway 2026 specific plan that was recently adopted. Again, just sort of overlaying where our site fits in relation to that. I'll get into the discussion about the thoroughfares that run adjacent to our site momentarily. But as you can see, as the city has envisioned this to really be a very active area with a mix of densities, mix of uses, mixed-use components, commercial components. And one of the main Actually, if I can click back here for a second. Linden Road initially was identified to go sort of straight through east-west. That's a really high-level concept of the transportation plan. As the city dove into what that would look like on a more specific area for the Highway 2026, it was determined that Linden Road should not continue completely east-west, that it should make a jog. And that actually impacted our site very significantly, as you may have seen in the information package that you received. We're dedicating 5.58 acres of ground and constructing the thoroughfare to go through there. So the realignment of Linden Road to connect on the west side of Franklin Boulevard up to Prescott Lane, and then it's planned to continue on to the east, as I've shown. So that'll be a minor arterial that we will be constructing. It's a 100-foot right-of-way. There's over 2,750 lineal feet that we will be building. As I mentioned, 5.58 acres of dedication. And we've rerouted that right-of-way. There was the 9 Mile Creek and some other elements that we needed to avoid. So the city had requested that we make this realignment. That is very different from what the original development agreement and the site plan for the original development agreement showed. But we worked with city staff to accommodate that. This is just more detail of what that Linden Road section will look like on the west side of our project. Linden will be developed as a full section, and then as we move towards the east, we've done a modified section, working again with staff to try to minimize impacts to our neighbors, provide the thoroughfare that is needed. The site plan, as you will see, we have a mix of product types. We start with a C-store type of element in the southwest corner of our site at the intersection of Franklin Road and Linden Road. And then we transition the density from higher density sort of closer into that, and then feather that density out to larger lots as we move northeast through the site. I should also note that south of Linden Road will remain as an open space. It'll be landscaped, but it will remain as an open space. There's actually a floodplain in there that's part of the 9 Mile Creek. So we've worked with staff to keep that as an open area. It'll be fenced along the eastern boundary of our property to a solid 6-foot vinyl fence from the right-of-way down to the irrigation easement, just to provide privacy, phasing and architecture. So
let's go for like another minute or so if we can, or can you wrap up in about a minute?
Yep, I can,
Okay,
for sure.
there's
Apologize for that. So we're developing the project in 6 phases. We will start with phase 1 in the southeast corner and sort of move our way again to the northeast. We have frontage improvements along Franklin Road and Prescott Ave, as well as some development of Elm Lane that we will be making. This is the product that we will be building in this project. It's exactly like what we build throughout the Treasure Valley. We have a range of product types, which we believe really complies with the goals of the master plan community to provide a variety of housing types. This is just a really diagrammatic image of the open space. As I mentioned, we have 20% open space throughout the community, connected with amenities and pathways, really making it walkable and inviting. These are some details, and I thank you for your time, and I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for the applicant right now? All right, we'll probably be calling you back up.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Christy, staff report.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Christy Watkins. I'm the principal planner for the City of Nampa. The actions requested from you this evening are recommendation of approval for development agreement modification, rezone, master plan community, and a preliminary plat. So the entire property is currently zoned RS 8.5. The request is to rezone 26.99 acres to RS 6, which you'll see at the top of the screen. 18.61 acres to RS 4. Those are both for single-family detached homes. And then 25.57 acres to RML for attached single-family homes, so townhouses. And 2.76 acres to commercial. And this can all be accomplished through the master plan community concept. So to the north is RS 8.5 city-zoned property that will be the Cherry Grove subdivision, which is currently under construction. The southeast and west is all still Canyon County and is agriculture. To the south, there is some residential acreage. In March of 2007, this was annexed and zoned to RS 8.5 with a conceptual layout for a Haltom development. At that time, it really strictly was conceptual. It was not presented as a preliminary plat, so it had not been formally designed. In August of 2021 and April of 2022, we had multiple pre-app meetings with this applicant. Well, there's going to be a lot of information about traffic on this one. So the traffic impact study shows that the intersections shown on this map in green they have a substandard level of service, but are not the responsibility of this project. The red indicates turn lanes that will be required to be installed by the developer. So you can see 3 of those there. The purple indicates that an all-way stop shall be installed by the developer. So that's at Linden and Franklin. And the blue lines are improvements that are shown along Franklin and the Highway 2026 that are listed in the city's CIP plan. ITD has some very specific things that they are going to be doing. They are anticipating that Highway 2026 widening project will be completed in the fall of 2027, which includes a signalized intersection at Franklin Boulevard and US Highway 2026. Per this traffic impact study, a temporary traffic signal is warranted prior to development build-out at the intersection of Franklin and Highway 2026. The estimated build-out is scheduled through 2028. Therefore, ITD will not require a temporary traffic signal unless the development of the subdivision is expedited. A temporary traffic signal will only be permitted if no additional right-of-way needs to be acquired. The removal of the temporary traffic signal will be at the expense of the developer. The corridor plans for the intersection of Franklin Boulevard and the highway indicate that the intersection will be widened and signalized. If needed, the developer will need to confirm the construction timeframe and lane configurations for those temporary signals and confirm if they are within the approved right-of-way and will align with ITD's plans for that corridor. As she discussed, the developer shall dedicate 5.58 acres and construct a 2-lane full-width section of Linden Road. None of the studied intersections were shown to have high crash rates at this time during the 5-year period of 2016 to 2020, and there were also no documented fatality crashes during that period. Beyond any specific mitigation items that are called out in the traffic impact study, the project will be subject to standard traffic impact fees, which will at build out add up to about $1 million or $1.1 million. So there was some public input received from a neighbor to the southeast that states that they have horses that may be impacted by the neighbors and the traffic and would like a fence to be constructed to protect their horses and the neighbors from each other and are concerned about the continuation of their drainage facilities. And I believe the applicant has been in touch with that neighbor. We also received comments from the building department regarding building permits required, the Parks Department requiring the construction of a 20-foot pathway along the 5-mile drain. GIS had some street name comments. ITD had comments, of course, that I just read through. The police department stated that they recommend a commitment to fund 1.15 additional officers and 0.38 additional support staff. And the Nampa Fire Department states that this project is 3.6 miles from Fire Station number 3 with a response time of 7 minutes and will increase a personnel demand of 0.85 firefighters. But that it will, upon build-out, generate approximately $448,162 in impact fees. And the Engineering Division has reviewed and approved the traffic impact study and has provided comments on the plat, traffic, access, utilities, drainage, irrigation, and also provides a list of conditions that are attached in your staff report. So the proposed rezone is located on property that is designated as medium-density residential and commercial with a residential mixed use to the east and the west on the future land use map. The applicant requests to stretch the residential mixed use, although through the master plan community process, they are allowed to do multiple zones anyway, across the entire 73.92 acres. There are a number of guiding principles found in the comprehensive plan that are outlined as facts in your staff report. A few of those being defining density, smart growth principles, building design, housing affordability, and the need to provide a variety of single-family housing types with strategies of how to achieve that. So in the comprehensive plan, it talks about compatibility, it defines residential, and it defines neighborhood commercial strategies. All of those guiding principles were found to be met by staff. The proposed BC, RML, RS4, and RS6 zoning districts are permitted zones in those designations. The structures located in the RML and the BC zoning districts will be subject to design review. Uses that are currently in the area or within 1 mile of the proposed development include a convenience store, an elementary school, a high school, large county residential lots, agricultural land, and smaller medium-density lot subdivisions that are within the city limits. Ridgeview High School is approximately 2,000 feet from the boundary of this project. The future elementary school that will be going on the property to the west of Ridgeview High School is approximately 1,020 feet, and the middle school is 3.5 miles away. So the development agreement is being requested to be changed basically because of the Linden realignment request from the city, the fact that we now have a requirement for open space, and that none of that was included in the original concept. We also used to include a number of conditions in the development agreement that actually are not in line with fair housing. And so we'd like to get those removed out of there as well. The applicant requests this modification to do the 4 new zones and a new concept plan. So here's a comparison of the old and the new. On the left is the old, on the right is the new. The old one was presented as a concept. There were no actual numbers provided for number of lots. The past staff report states that this annexation was for participation in the extension of a sewer service to that area. There was no open space required at that time, and there was no extension of Linden Road. In the new one, the residential lots equal 286 lots. The density is 4.13 dwelling units per acre, which fits within the comprehensive plan, which is 2.5 to 8 dwelling units per acre. There is 15% open space required. They are proposing 20. The extension of Linden Road provides aligned access onto Franklin Boulevard with the existing Linden Road. And there will be 10-foot wide sidewalks along Franklin and Linden and internal pathways connecting the entire development. There are city services and utilities available to this property. There will be a variety of sizes of houses available in a range of prices. It was platted in accordance with Section 10.8, Section 10.11, and Section 10.16, and of course, according to our master plan community concept. In the RS4, there are 2 lots that are presented under 4,000 square feet, and in the RS6, there's 1 lot presented under 6,000 square feet. In this case, that can be allowed through this MPC process. Lot 18, Block 13 is 8,399 square feet and includes a long triangular driveway. This can also be requested to be larger if done through the master plan community process. Lot widths shall measure 30 feet in both the RS and RS6. The smallest lot width is 30 feet. Lot depths shall measure equal or greater to 50 feet in RS4 and 60 feet in RS6. The smallest lot depth is proposed at 97 feet. So for the RS4 and the RS6 zones, the acreage is 45.6 acres. The number of buildable residential lots is 182 detached units, which creates a gross density of 4 dwelling units per acre. And in the RML is 25.57 acres with a total of 104 attached units, which creates a gross density of 4.06 dwelling units per acre, which also fits within the density required in the medium density residential designation. So again, 15% open space was required. They're proposing 20%. The amenities include pathways, for internal connectivity, open gathering areas, trails, and playgrounds. There's a 25-foot landscape buffer required along Franklin Boulevard and the new section of Linden Road, and will be constructed with this subdivision. There's also a 15-foot landscape buffer required along Elm and Prescott Lane. So for the master plan community, each development over 5 acres shall contain at least 2 qualified open space elements. In this, that would include internal pathways, the open and gathering areas, trails, playgrounds, as well as the 10-foot wide side paths that are going along Franklin and Linden Road. So the findings for a master plan community are that this does fall within the requirement that it has to be at least over 40 acres, as it sits at 73.92 acres. It also has to meet standard building requirements, and of course, they'll have to submit building permits and meet those requirements. The intent of the master plan community is to allow a developer to use creativity and successful design principles that bring together multiple elements in a cohesive design utilizing smart growth principles that may otherwise not be permitted in city code. The bulk requirements that would otherwise be applicable to a project developed in a given zone wherein a master plan community is proposed may be altered by the commission as part of the MPC's review and approval process. The commission may allow deviations from setbacks, lot sizes, property depth, property width, building height, and street frontage requirements without one or more variance application permits being required. So the density allowed can be increased by 20%. The density has not been requested to be increased on this project. The lot sizes, again, a little bit smaller in the RS4, but not by much. Smallest lot is proposed at 3,935 square feet and 5,995 square feet in the RS6 zone. And then the larger ones, let's see, hold on, I lost my spot. The largest is proposed at 8,399 square feet in the RS6. Okay, sorry. Not larger than 8,000 for RS4, 12,000 for RS6. The largest lot in RS4 is 8,399, and the largest lot in the RS6 is 11,238. Sorry about that. There are no special requests that have been made in regards to bulk requirements like setbacks or building heights, and they will be reviewed according to the current zoning code. The ratio of land in an MPC or a PUD that is larger than 5 acres in a mixed-use land use designation. In the residential mixed-use land use designation on the future land use map, over 50% of the proposed land use shall be residential with no less than 5% of the land as commercial. The area designated as commercial use in this is approximately 5% based on the buildable area, with the rest of the buildable area for single-family detached and attached dwelling units. So there are basically 3 criteria to be used when you determine zoning. 1, does it propose a compatible zone? 2, does it propose a compatible use? And 3, is it in the interest of the public? Staff finds all of these criteria to be met. Should you choose to approve this request, these are the conditions of approval that are listed in your staff report, and these are the recommended motions. I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for Christy?
I have a couple.
Commissioner Morgan?
The new Linden Road, you say that's 100 feet right away. Is that all 100 feet in the new development?
Yes, it is.
Sidewalks, everything on both sides?
There will only be sidewalks installed on the north side of Linden Road, but the entire 100-foot width of the right-of-way will be on their property.
Does any of this, the residential portion require DR, design review?
Not in the RS zones, no, but the RML and the BC, yes. So the townhouse.
So the townhouses
The
will
townhouses
require it.
will have to have it, yes.
That's all.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead with the public testimony for this item. Can we have the clerk will read the sign-up sheet as she has it on her system, and then if there's anybody else at the end, I'll make sure and come back and if anybody's not signed up. So again, when you come up, state your name and address for the record. We have 3 minutes to provide testimony, and then we'll move on to the next person. So go ahead, Madam
Mr.
Clerk.
Chair, the first is Christine Thomas.
Hello, I'm Christine Thomas. I live at 19885 Franklin Boulevard, Nampa, Idaho 83687. This is way too dense, way too dense. I know that there's an attempt to make open space, and so I took this picture of from my porch a couple nights ago from that beautiful sunset we all saw. And the sun's going down, and it's shining off the mountains, and it's pink, and there's 80 acres of fields in front of me, and I thought, when people from out of town with all their money think about moving to Idaho, this is what they want to see. And they don't want a bunch of ugly tract housing that looks like every other place they've ever gone to before. So they're going to pay the big money and go on down the road to Eagle, where they can have space. Because I feel like nowadays people want that farm-to-table lifestyle where they have a garden and they have chickens and they have little goats, I don't know. But you can't do that with townhouses. And once you take this land, it is gone. And there's nothing you can do, and you can't bring it back. And when I tell people I live in Nampa, I want them to say, oh, I love Nampa. It's so cute. It's got all these little farms, and everyone looks so happy living there. I don't want them to say, oh, yeah, it's like Phoenix, Arizona. There's just thousands and thousands of acres of just one subdivision after another. I want to be proud of where I'm from, and I want my kids to be able to grow up still living on our 3 acres with lots more acres around them. And so I just think this is way too dense, and we can bring it down, and we can still provide homes, and we can still provide a little commercial, and we can still provide what we need, but giving people what they want so that people will want to move to Nampa, and they won't say, oh yeah, don't bother, go on down the road, Nampa's done for, you know? I want it to be someplace that people want to be, that we can be proud of, that we can have the space that we want to be in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, next is Jacob Jones.
Good evening. I'm Jacob Jones. I live at 7987 Timberline Drive, Nampa, Idaho. So just south of the property in question. My main goal here is to state that I am against this development. It is not, as a person who's spent my entire life in Idaho, this development is not consistent with the history of our community. It's not consistent with Nampa as previous developed. It is 25 minimum to 50% more dense than it's currently zoned for, which will have a significant impact. While the traffic study was done in 2016 through 2021, that's inadequate to estimate the impact of current traffic, as there's at least 1,000 homes being planned to be put on North Franklin Road currently. So data from a time when there's literally 40 homes seems inadequate to estimate what that development will impact us. A four-way stop at that road there with the Linden extension will likely preclude us from leaving my property and my neighbor's property quite easily. So we have some major concerns about that. It is just too dense. It is not, while I recognize that this will probably be developed regardless, the level of density and the future zone and impact this will have on our city, including the school zones, is significant. I don't think that this is in the best interest of the city to have this level of density at the edge of the city. And there's no buffer between our current properties who are all on acreages. It will be essentially against what looks to be a modern day mobile home park. It is not going to have long-term value, most likely, and it's not something I'm in favor of.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, next would be Kathy Aachen.
Hello, I'm Kathy Aucoin, 19200 Prescott Lane, Nampa 83687. My concern, I talked to Bonnie about fencing around our horse area, and I never got an answer back on that. We have, if you can find the map where our property is on the north-south section, up against Prescott Lane with that little cutout. Okay, it's showing the barn on that. You see there's the house is on an acre. Then we have, oh, I'm sorry. I feel like I have to point it out.
That's your property there?
Thank you. Anyway, our barn is like 40 feet from the back of their property. And we have an arena outside on the north side of that barn, and that's a round pen. The arena would be the rest of that. Then we have horse pens. And they all go, we don't have any fences except for the paddocks the horses are in, but we never needed it because of the farms. We just went and caught the horse and had a lot of time to get it. But now, if something gets loose, we're going to have, in the neighborhoods, we're going to have kids coming in to pet the ponies. Horses bite, they kick, they run, they get scared, dogs chase them. And it's a hazard. And I haven't seen any interest on the other side about taking care of that.
Okay,
So-
we'll ask about the fencing plans and get an answer from the developer.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next is William Spite.
Good evening, staff. My name is William Spite, 7981 Timberline Drive. We're just north of Jacob, just south of the activity. Yep, right there. And really, my concerns mirror what's been said. The density is just, it's way too dense. This is a beautiful area. There's lots of large lots in there. It's very popular. They just developed the section to the south of us a few years back. Large lot homes. I think there's a real opportunity to make this a destination like was described before, to come to Nampa, have a little bit of space to work in, be able to see the sunset, and that's not at all what we're seeing here. And again, that's one of the biggest concerns I have. The second concern, which again was also stated, is that intersection of Linden and Franklin, and a stop sign is going to kill us, right? You can see our driveway exits right there. That whole area, every time there's a stop sign, there's traffic, it's backed up well past where we're going to be able to get out of our house. And, the roundabouts that are going in have been a tremendous, opportunity to relieve traffic in several intersections around there. I also understand this is probably going to be developed, and I'm okay with that. The density, if we can work on that, and if we could figure out a roundabout there, that would change my perspective dramatically on this development situation. But, the green space, everything, that looks good, but just way too dense, and the traffic at that intersection is going to have a major impact on a, very large couple lots that are there, and we've been there for 18 years now and have loved it. And again, not against growth, understanding we need to have some housing for folks in Nampa, but I think we'll have a real opportunity to make this a destination. As I understand, to the north of this subdivision, there is a development going in that has larger lots. The lots on the north side mirror those in size, but then they get more and more dense as you go south, and that doesn't help me at all, right? I've got a large lot. I've got an acre and of grass. I've got a 2-acre lot. Right next to me is a 4,000 square foot lot. A bunch of them is not good. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Bo Bonds.
Hello, Bo Bonds. Address is 8080 East Drinkard Lane, just north of the project. Number one, I was a little agitated because this public notice was put up on Franklin Road, which has been closed for the last, 2 months or 3 months, so I didn't even see this notice.
It's convenient, isn't it?
Yeah, until last week, so we couldn't really rally the troops as much as I would have liked to, but that's unfortunate. Second thing, I guess, the comprehensive plan that was just passed last year, I think it's kind of ironic that we're already making changes to the comprehensive plan that's been passed. So I don't like that part of it either. I think if you make a plan, I think we should stick to it. And every time somebody comes up with a way to build more homes on less land, and then we're just okay, yeah, let's change the plan. Let's make that work. We made the plan. Let's stick with it. The traffic study that was done, that not only was it a long time ago, but that intersection, Linden and Franklin, it's a T, so there's not as much traffic as what would probably be when if you make that a 4-way. And then the traffic has increased significantly since that study was done. And then my biggest concern is just, I've said it many times at these meetings, is just the sprawl that we're experiencing in our area north of town. There's tons of acreage that's undeveloped to the south in the city limits. I understand this is already in city limits, but my desire would just see, let's get this undeveloped land taken care of first before we going out to the edges. And a couple questions I had for the developer. The start date, I didn't hear when that proposed was, and the plan for the existing homes that are in that acreage that's there too. I'd like to know what the plans would be for that. But all in all, I think that now it's just the density is definitely an issue. We're in an area where everyone has, or with the exception of this new neighborhood that's coming in, but everybody has large lots, larger homes, and I think this is just going to, bring our values down. Townhomes on the edge of town just doesn't seem very appropriate. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next is Stacy Driscoll.
I'm Stacy Driscoll, 8249 East Drinkard Lane, Nampa, just to the north of there as well. My concern is the density as well. I just think right now the traffic is so bad. Like, it used to take me 17 minutes to get to work. Now with all the construction, it takes me at least 40 to 45 minutes to get to work. So I'm just thinking of how much more that's going to bring it in. And then I think of the density taking our value down for our acreage that we have out there, the nicer places. I've heard about a fire department being built, but I don't know anything more about that. And my concern too is just like our neighbor that wasn't close enough, so Middleton was called for him. By the time they came, his barn had burnt down. So, and then also, you know, the schools that are coming in, they haven't even been started yet either. So we're almost like ahead of ourselves getting these homes built, and then yet not having everything else. Infrastructure is always said as we're building the home. So those are my concerns, and I think that they're really legit. And then of course, everybody else has came up and said, I agree with everything they say too. So I oppose it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And last is Paula Bonds.
I am Paula Drinkard Bonds, and my address is 8080 East Drinkard Lane, and I do want to oppose it. I want to agree with what William, Kathy, Jacob, a lot of us have our concerns. We love our area out there. All we ask is that you guys do listen to what is being said, because it's very important to us out there, and way too dense. You guys put a master plan there, and now it's changing, and it's frustrating a lot of people. And what's really hard is when we didn't see that piece of paper that was posted, so we ended up gathering a few that we could to try to get what was really going on there, knowing that it's going from a master plan to something that's more dense, that keeps changing. Either way, I oppose it. I am with everybody else, and thank you for your time, and I hope you guys really listen to what people have said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, that ends the speakers.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on for, against, or undecided on this application? Okay. The applicant come back up and address questions, concerns. I have some notes. I'm sure you do too. But
Thank you, Chairman, members of the commission. Bonnie Layton again for the applicant. Again, I appreciate your time this evening. I'll try to make this quick and go through some of my notes. I do want to be clear that we are actually following the comprehensive plan and the future land use map that was adopted. And I think you can see, well, Christy, I don't know if you want to put that back up. As staff had mentioned, we are in compliance with that plan. That plan has been adopted and in place for several years. There has been a further specific plan that has been developed specifically for this area that we're also in compliance of. So what our request is doing is actually bringing our project in line with what the vision is for the city as it has been adopted for a number of years. So just, I think there's maybe some confusion on that in terms of some of our neighbors. Let's see, just going down the list here. In order to create a community that is smart growth principles, we have obviously Ridgeview High School a half mile away. There's an elementary school that's going to be built. This is a perfect place for families to live within close proximity to those schools. We are also just a mile south of Highway 2026, which is a major thoroughfare and corridor to move people throughout the Treasure Valley. Again, a great location for housing. The traffic congestion, we hear that often. Projects like this actually help the development of those thoroughfares. We are required, as Christy mentioned in her staff report, to improve various areas, not just adjacent to our property, but also within the surrounding area, as well as contributing about $1 million, $1.1 million into the traffic mitigation fund. That's on top of the 5.5 acres that we will be dedicating to the city for the Linden extension right-of-way at about a land value right now of probably about $1 million plus another $1 million in construction costs for that we are bearing solely as the developer for this. It's a fairly significant piece to the puzzle for this project that will not only benefit our project, but also benefit the entire community, as requested by the city for us to do. Let's see. I think in our submittal items, we're required to submit an estimated value that we will be bringing to this community in terms of the development. That is in your package. You know, we are spending millions of dollars to create quality homes in a quality community that's walkable, that's a place for local residents and employees to live. Let's see. With a question regarding the barn, Kathy spoke earlier. I did have a conversation with her as well as with her husband. We looked at that condition on our southeast corner. As I mentioned, we will be installing a 6-foot vinyl privacy fence along our eastern boundary, which is their western boundary. And then there's the, as you turn to go up, if Christy, if you could flip to that, thank you. We will have the right-of-way, and then we have a landscape buffer on the north side of our road, and fencing, and then our community. So very typical to what you see development patterns within the whole Treasure Valley region.
I'm sorry, can I, just for clarification then, so
Sure.
the fence, will that be built on the north part, on the south of Linden, South Linden?
Yes,
The
right where,
southern part of Linden Street?
right where Christie's got that.
Okay, will it go up along Linden, though?
It
On the north
is-
side of the property?
On the north side of our property, however, we've determined with staff that placing a 6-foot vinyl privacy fence along that right-of-way would get destroyed. It would be a hazard. So at this time, we're not proposing anything. We have shifted the road onto our property so that we can build that full section so that it's drivable. But at this point, that's what we're looking at.
And that property on the south goes butts right up against the south part of Linden?
Yes, that is correct. So there's an open field, and then there's their pens for their horses. They have an open field along Prescott, and currently, right now, there's just it looks like a ditch road.
There's not going to be any fence at all there, any kind of,
We aren't planning one.
I mean, either from you or currently now or whatever, there's not.
No, I mean, I think from what you heard in the testimony was that they have pens for their horses. It's open fencing. If their horses get out, I guess they run across the field,
Okay,
and then they
that's
go
what
get them. But we feel, again, working with staff, that installing any sort of solid fencing along there will just become a hazard. There's a couple of examples in the valley of that, and they're always being hit and destroyed, so. Let's see. So questions about the start date for the project? That was another question. You know, if we were to receive approval from you folks as well as the city council, we would anticipate starting horizontal construction sometime in probably the later part of 2024, by the time we submit our construction documents and get approvals through the city, with vertical construction on the building starting in 2025. And a final build-out. This is a large project. It'll take a number of years. We're looking at a build-out right now of about 2030 for the build-out of this community. Density, as we've heard some testimony about that. We're actually just well within the range. I think, as Christy mentioned, 2.51 to 8 dwelling units per acre, and we are just over 4. So I realize that I'm running out of time, so I will appreciate your time.
Please.
Pardon me?
Christy, could you point out on the map that you have there where the townhomes are? You're going, so both sides have townhomes? Why are they different sized lots then? Yeah, all right, that's townhomes there. And then move over to my right, yeah, what are those, right, no, go back. They're right there. What are those in there?
Those are townhouses also.
Alley-loaded townhomes.
I couldn't understand what.
Yes, those are alley-loaded townhomes.
Alley-loaded townhomes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, it seems like most people are concerned about the townhomes. Do you think there's any way you can make any kind of adjustment on the numbers to satisfy some of those concerns? I mean, I tend to agree with them. I think it's very dense, especially because we're so far out of the city limits. Normally, it's denser closer to town and gets fuller or more open space as you go further out. Here you're putting in a lot of townhomes further out. For one thing, it's going to be a lot of people having to drive a further distance. So I don't know if there's any.
I think, Chairman Van Acker, Commissioner Keough, I think what we need to really keep in mind in the development of this project is we have a neighborhood commercial component that we feel will be activated and very active with the density around that, as well as the proximity to the schools. The other thing to keep in mind, just in the global picture of what has been planned for the entire area, if we look back at, if we look back at the future land use map designations, so what you see today, a lot of the properties in the area will eventually develop to a density that is, again, trying to employ those smart growth principles. The density, we're just barely over 4 units per acre, which is quite the overall unit count. I mean, as Christy mentioned, we could have a much greater density. We felt like we were really trying to be mindful of the density ranges and not push the envelope to the extreme. So we brought forward what we felt was a very reasonable project, well within the boundaries and the limits of what the comprehensive plan and the zoning code allowed.
Okay. You don't think you can make any accommodation for the.
At this time, this is the project that we are presenting. You know, again, we believe that it's in compliance with the zoning code and the intentions of the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. So you keep talking about density, but are you referring to the density at the proposed density in this application or the current density now?
Chairman Van Acker, Commissioner Kirkman, the proposed density that we are requesting is 4.13 or 31, I keep.
So when you say it's well within the density, you're talking about the proposed density?
Correct, and actually with the previous development agreement, we are just over, I think the maximum on that originally was 4 units per 3.6 units per acre. So currently with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map designations that are allowed, we range anywhere from 2.81 to 8 units per acre. So we feel like we're really in the lower end of that range.
And you had also mentioned neighborhood commercial. Are you talking about that commercial lot there with the C-store?
Yes, that is correct, sir.
Nothing else in that whole development, proposed development would be?
No, we've also taken into consideration what else is sort of slated for the area. We felt that intersection and the proximity to the school would be a good location for a C-store for the kids. They could actually walk to the C-store at lunch. They don't have to get in a car to drive. anywhere. You will see on the east side of Franklin, what's proposed there is, a mixed use with live, work, and commercial. So eventually, it's planned that will all build out. This is a component. There will be additional services nearby. And then also, of course, you've got a mile to the north with Highway 2026 and the commercial corridor that will build out over there.
Other questions?
Yeah, but I can't read. I made a note here. What does TH stand for?
Townhome.
Townhomes.
Townhome?
Thanks for keeping track of my notes, Commissioner. So yeah, that was the same question that Commissioner Kehoe had. Was I guess I'm focusing on the density a little bit here, and why a bunch of townhomes. Is it just the cost, the factor that's involved?
It's actually, as part of the master plan community, and the goals of the city is to really provide a range of housing options and price points. And so, again, not everybody can afford an acre lot with a 3,000 square foot home, or even a quarter acre lot, with a 2,500 square foot home. These variations in product just allow more folks to be able to live in this great community, be able to work close by, and not have to be commuting in from farther out areas.
Okay. I have some additional questions for staff, but.
Yep, okay. Any other questions for the applicant? I think you hit everything I had on my list, so. Traffic study. When was that done? Did you do another one for this application?
Yes, that traffic study, I'll defer to your engineering department, but we were required to. This project actually went through a number of iterations. Sure. One of the original concepts we had a cluster of fourplexes down in the southwest corner of this project. So we've really tried to listen to staff, the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as the City Council, through the development of this project and what we believe the city is looking for. So we scaled that back and we adjusted our traffic impact study accordingly.
And when traffic impact studies are done, they look at what the impact of the project is, plus, what else is going on. So it doesn't just look at this in a vacuum, I think, like a lot of people think.
That is correct, and they do account for a lot of background. Again, I'm not a traffic engineer.
We'll ask the engineer.
Yeah, but they do account not only for our project, but other projects on the horizon and traffic in the area.
Yes.
I think I saw in the packet it was done in May this year.
That's what I thought. May of this year. Okay. That's all I got. Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time this evening and request your approval.
Entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion by Kehoe, second.
Dapper.
Okay. By Dapper to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, public hearing's closed. Questions for staff? Or comments?
Daniel?
Is Daniel here? Oh, yeah, he did. He did come tonight.
I think those are some valid concerns. I think I know the answer about the four-way intersection. I think I know the answer to this. Can you put a roundabout there?
So I would not be surprised if in the future a roundabout does go in there. It doesn't warrant that at this time. Per the traffic study, a four-way stop still provides an adequate level of service. Per the city's definition of what an adequate level of service is.
How far can cars be backed up and still provide an adequate level of service?
So that is not specifically
that's what I was worried about.
A criteria. It's the volume that can make it through the intersection and the delay on any given vehicle that determines that level of service. The city has adopted a level of service D as our acceptable level of service, and this would meet that.
You have, I'm sure you have guidelines of how close driveways and stuff can be to a four-way stop. I know that's tough here because the driveway's already in place.
So yes, we certainly have standards for access spacing on arterial, collector, and local roads even. Where these are in place existing and were permitted not under the City of Nampa's guidelines, but under the highway districts. We make the best we can with them, but they are there and we don't have the ability to go and close them, obviously.
So are we getting the right-of-way necessary to build a roundabout in the future?
So we would need, likely, we would want, with the drains there and the creeks there to the south, we would likely shift that to the south some. That is certainly, they have open space there, they're not putting in buildings. So as a condition of approval, you could certainly request that they dedicate additional right-of-way there to facilitate a future roundabout. And it would not impact the project in any significant way, I don't believe.
But wouldn't it impact the people that are living just south of that intersection?
Well, so there are currently, Christy, can you put up so there's no current residents on the south corners of those intersections. There's the areas there that would be affected by that roundabout right-of-way needs would be vacant open areas. Yes, that is it.
That's Linden, yeah. That's where we're saying the roundabout would go.
Okay.
So no, it would not, putting one in there, it would not affect properties by existing residents. It would be development ground.
Have to be moved down a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know roundabouts cost more. Do we save money by doing it right the first time rather than doing something once and then going back and building it again? Or, well, I mean, I know.
It's certainly not something that like I say, it's not something that is identified as required by the development, and so not something that the developer would be responsive to.
Since the traffic study doesn't mandate it, we can't require it legally. Is that true? I'm not a lawyer either.
I would say requiring the dedication of the right-of-way for a future roundabout there would easily be within the normal conditions that could be applied. Requiring them to construct something that is not warranted by their development gets us into an area that I'm not comfortable with.
Makes sense to me, yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can you go back to I think it was one of the very first or second slides that the applicant had about, and it had the intersections with the red dots and the one purple dot and.
That was in Christie's presentation.
Oh, was that in yours?
Yep.
That green and red dot on, I think it's Linden to the west, that seems, well, there's that one and the one to the south. Why are those so far away that they have to?
So our traffic study policy requires, based on the size of the development, dictates how far out their traffic study looks at intersections. And so that's basically the general area that was required for this one. The green are obviously existing deficiencies that are not the responsibility of the developer to correct. The red dots are where their project triggers the improvements. The collection of impact fees really is what we utilize to take care of those green dots as they rise in in the priority list of our capital improvement plan, and so impact fees will help to fund those as they become priorities within our capital improvement plan.
CIP includes widening of Franklin?
That is identified within our transportation master plan. It's in an out year, but it is identified within that in the future, yes. And we are currently pursuing grants for many of the intersections and other things along Ustick Road in association with the impacts that Highway 16's interchange will have there. And so we should know in the next few weeks whether we receive those grants that will bring Ustick Road improvements from 16 farther to the west, as well as other grant opportunities that we're looking at on Franklin as well.
Is Franklin us or ITD?
Franklin is a local road split between ourselves and the highway district, Canyon Highway, depending on the location.
And another quick question. So when it comes to smart growth principles, I understand the walkability and the proximity to schools and things like that, but why doesn't it include traffic? Or does it? That's a Rodney question.
Smart growth is a planning concept.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So smart growth principles, it includes, walkability within and without the development or in close proximity to schools and commercial areas, things like that. But does it include traffic?
It includes traffic because you're reducing the amount of travel time and travel distance on the roadways. So when you have proximity to all those destinations, you're traveling less on the roadways, leading to less traffic.
So what kind of proximity does this development have to any of those?
That's up to you to determine.
Okay. And I do see with Highway 16 coming through that that will take a lot of pressure off of these folks and every other development out there that's going to come from going south to the freeway or south to the freeway and maybe just hopping over. But then I worry about that 2-lane Linden Road. That's going to be a major thoroughfare when some of these get built out to get to Highway 16, but that's down the road, a few years.
Your son will be on the council.
I'll be long gone, yeah. One other quick question about the notice. That had come up a couple of times about the notice on Franklin and Franklin being closed. Were there other notices that were posted?
We have multiple ways for people to be notified. One is in the paper. One is on our website.
The newspaper, the physical one that
the
people don't
newspaper,
open it?
and on the website, the newspaper's website. On our website, and you can go onto our website and sign up for notifications every time there's a project. So you can get notified anytime that we place anything on the agenda. So that's another way to do it. The other way, again, this is state code, but we've gone beyond state code by putting it all on the website and giving you an opportunity to get emailed when that happens. But state code requires that we post on the property. So that's those big 40 by 40 inch signs that we created to try to get more attention. In the past, it was an 8.5 by 11. And now we're doing a larger sign to try to get as many people aware of the project as possible. Just my experience over the last 18 years or so, we see people express concerns about that, and I'm not sure what else to do. I've done the best I can to get that word out, and we will always have people say that it wasn't notified appropriately, but we've followed state law and beyond.
And that's why I asked the question, because I want people to understand that you do make quite a bit of effort to get the word out there. Short of going door to door and knocking on the door and letting them know. Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions for Daniel? Covered traffic, okay.
Chair?
Yes, sir.
To get back to the motion, one thing I'd like to say is that I was concerned and am concerned about the density of the project, especially with the townhomes. But 2 points. One, the proximity to the school. I think it's important to have a variety of different price points for people to live in because not everybody can afford, like these other folks out here, on their acreages. So we have to have something for them. And also, we have stressed as a committee and as a city council that we need that variety of housing, and we always do this in one large group or so. So this is a project that has the whole shooting match all in there together, and we don't get that very often. So that's, to me, is a good saving point that I'm not going to object to the density because it's that variety of all the different types of housing is what we really need to have. That's what your saving grace is, and I'll vote for the project because of those.
Mr. Chair, I did want to ask, I'm sorry, I just saw this
You
note.
said you weren't going to ask anymore.
But I just saw this note appeared out of nowhere that I made. The compatibilities.
We'll ask questions.
The compatibility of surrounding neighborhoods, homes, things like that. So on the south part of the property, and I don't know, can you go quickly back to the site plan? Sorry, I know we've been there a few times. So that row of housing along the south part of that property, are those are single-family homes? Those are not, are those townhomes or single-family homes? I'm sorry, probably the applicant.
Commissioner
closed.
Kirkman, the townhouses are single-family homes.
Well, I understand that, I'm sorry, detached.
They are attached.
I need to be more clear.
They are attached, single-family homes in this area right here,
Okay,
which is separated by the 100-foot roadway
Right.
and then the common lot. There isn't really a house within, 150, 200 feet
okay. As you go further up then, those are,
up here.
no, up further up on the southern part of that.
This way? Yeah, so those are just the RS4
Okay.
zoned properties that are just a tad smaller.
All right. Okay,
Those are detached houses. Those are not attached.
Detached, right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what it is. Okay, thank you.
So, Christine, if I'm doing my math right, and this is what the applicant said, is that their density is about 4 units per acre, is that right?
That's correct.
And that's all gross density, right?
Correct.
And if I look on the website here, RS 8.5, like the applicant said, is somewhere between 2.5 and 8 units per acre, and that's also gross?
Yeah. So the 2.5 to 8 is in the comprehensive plan.
Under medium
That's-
density.
Yeah, that's what gives us the range that we can put those zoning designations into.
So I guess you could say that RS 8.5 is on the low end of that, would be closer to the 2.5 than 8.
Absolutely, yes.
What is a typical gross density for an RS 8.5?
Rodney has an awesome graph to share with you.
Great.
So Commissioners, this was in my annual report to you for the year 2022. So this is at the end of 22. And first time in 10 years I've seen it go below 3 as an average density. But typically you're going to get between 3 and 4 dwelling units per acre, or excuse me, 3 and 4 dwelling density, excuse me. Can't talk right now. But yeah, so you see back in 2019, it was just above 4 as the average. And then also back in 2015 was above that 4, significantly above it. But this is just your average of plats, densities, gross densities over those years.
And this is across all zones, though?
That's across all zones.
That are platted.
And I guess...
That are platted, yeah.
Okay. What I'm driving at is, I guess I'll just tell you my thoughts now. You were worried I wasn't going to give you my thoughts tonight, huh? I don't love the idea of all this density this far away from the center of town.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
But I feel like it's it's not appropriate to compare this to open farmland because that's what they're already approved to build RS 8.5. So what we have to compare it to is that, as if, you know, they're already approved to do RS 8.5. So do we like this better or worse than just a subdivision that looks just like the one to the north of it that's under construction already? So when I'm saying they could, I don't know, can they get 4 units per acre on an RS 8.5?
Not with our open space requirements.
Not with the open space, okay. What would they be?
Maybe closer to 3.
3?
Maybe even under.
So that's what we're looking at, is 1 extra unit per acre on this, because we're letting them densify this. And the thing I'm trying to struggle with in my head is, this seems out of place now. Is it going to seem out of place in 10 years when they develop all around that high school? You know, we see what happens. You know, I grew up in South Nampa where I went to CUNA schools, and they built that new CUNA high school out right next to the dairy and all that farmland. And now it's not dairy and farmland anymore. Well, the dairy's still there, but it's surrounded by commercial and subdivisions and everything, you know. So it seems out of place to me, but I don't know that it's more out of place than any other subdivision would be, and what will be there in 10 years. I don't know which way I'm going to vote yet, but those are my thoughts.
I think for me, if you look at, for instance, what happened over there at, is it 10 Mile and Linder and Highway 2026, and what's happening there, they built a Costco, they built all kinds of stuff. And that's the same road, and it's the same widening that's happening all the way to Caldwell. And so it's not going to be too long before it's developed all the way through that corridor, which is just a few miles up the road, right? And in terms of the density, I'm with what Steve says, right? And you have these larger acreage lots that are out there, but none of them are going to want to build right next door to that commercial, right? And so that's why they introduced that other density, is that it feathers, just like she mentioned in her presentation, that you put the most density that's closest to the commercial, and then it gets, you know, less and less and less as it goes away from the commercial. And so it makes sense to me that way, that's why they presented the density the way that they did, plus the fact that if you use that density, like they're trying to do, you're using up less acreage of land for houses, right? The farmland is wonderful. That's what we love, and we want to keep it. So build some areas of density around the commercial so that you chew up less and less of the acreage land around it, and especially when you're right there near the school where people are going to want to develop around. So for me, it makes sense the way that it's developed.
Struggling a little bit with the density too, but to your comment about, what's this going to look like in 10 years? I don't think it's going to be 10 years. I think it's going to be 5, especially with Highway 16 going in there. A gentleman had mentioned, why not grow south Nampa? Well, we've looked at that also, but the city has wanted to maintain that area south of Nampa as agricultural with the seed industry and whatnot too. So,
well, I don't want to be too presumptuous, but I think what he meant was the area south of this development between it and the city.
no, I think.
I think it is.
I'm talking like out in the desert where the sagebrush is, you know, on the way to Melba. That's what I was thinking. But Franklin is a corridor, Highway 16, and it's going to be not too long before that whole area is going to look like. And we won't even notice. I don't think there'll be much farmland out there at all.
And let me just jump in and say, I agree with that comment. I think we should infill and closer to town. But that's kind of not in play here because it's already annexed and it's already got an agreement to build a subdivision there, so.
I have a hard time looking at a project that's in compliance with the comprehensive plan that we all approved and saying, no, you know, maybe I can understand wanting to push it back, but I can't understand saying, no, you can't build that, it's too dense, because it's right in the middle of what we've asked for in that area. You know, they're asking for just over 4. We said it needs to be between 2.5 and 8. I mean, they could have asked for 8, they didn't. I have a hard time saying, oh, you follow the rules, you can't have it, you know?
I agree with Matt and Cody both.
Yeah.
I think it's a good project for what we have out there.
Good
I
comment.
think the thing that I continually struggle with is people talk about how bad the traffic is in the city of Nampa, right? But in terms of planning, we've kind of put ourselves in that hole, right? Because we've said that we want to keep all of our farmland and we want to keep all the big giant houses out on the edge of town and then put everybody in the center of town, and then everybody has to come to one spot to do the shopping, right? And so then you got the marketplace, which is a disaster that nobody wants to go to, right? And so what they're trying to do is like what you were saying with the 2026. They're going to develop that out. Maybe we can get another commercial center somewhere else, which with Highway 16 in 2026, I can see that area exploding with commercial, right? And that's going to be right out here where this thing is. And so in terms of how long is it going to stay out in the country, I don't think it's going to be very long. But that's what we want to do, right? Because what's that going to do? It's going to take pressure off of these other areas so that it's not such a disaster to go to, because they have options to go to somewhere else to shop. And so I think it's a great deal to spread it out a little bit.
They need another Chick-fil-A in north end of town.
There you go.
Hopefully Chick-fil-A is listening. I agree with all your comments. Good discussion. We need a motion. I can't make it.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the development agreement modification to ordinance number 3683 and master plan community for a mixed-use development with commercial, single-family detached, and attached residential uses, zoning map amendment from RS 8.5 to 2.76 acres of BC, 25.63 acres of RML, 18.54 acres of RS4, and 26.99 acres of RS6 zoning districts. Subdivision preliminary plat for Haltom Heritage subdivision on 3 parcels at 0 Prescott Lane, 7825 East Elm Lane, and 7851 East Elm Lane for Trilogy Development, Sean Brownlee, with all conditions listed in the staff report, and to adopt proposed findings of approval as stated in that staff report.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Yes.
Is anybody interested in the condition of the right-of-way for the roundabout?
I would be.
Yeah, I would
I think it's a good idea.
I am, but how much of that?
I think it just has to be in the language that the developer work with staff to determine the amount.
Would that
I don't
change,
know how we would do that.
but would that change any of the, it's probably too early of a question, but would that change any of the site plan?
We can work with them, and this will also go to city council. We can have that resolved before it goes to city council.
Yeah, I think it's good. You want to add it?
I move to amend my
Thanks.
motion.
Reread it
to add
again?
that.
Yeah,
I
reread the
don't
whole
wanna
thing
read
again.
Eligible the first time and the second time.
To add the condition to work with staff to dedicate more right-of-way for the roundabout at the intersection.
Roundabout.
And I'll still second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend approval of this item. I won't read it again. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hesitantly, aye.
It looks
Any opposed?
it looks the same on the paper either way.
But it's on the record.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. That'll go to city council. And I appreciate your time this evening, and watch for the notices, and I'm sure you'll all be at city council. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda this evening is a subdivision preliminary plat approval for Trestle Creek subdivision at 0, 0, and 0 Ustick Road. 42.28 acres in the BC, RS6, and RMH zoning districts for Kent Brown, representing Endurance Holdings, for 1 commercial lot, 29 common lots, and 235. Huh?
It's 237.
My sheet says 235. Is that amended?
Mine says 235. I think we'll get by either.
235 residential dwelling units in a single-family detached, single-family attached, and multiple-family buildings on 163 residential lots. Kent, come on up.
In red.
Mr. Applicant.
For the record, Kent Brown, 3161 East Springwood, Meridian, Idaho. This is an item that was recently annexed and zoned with a development agreement. This matches that and matches current city code with regards to open space and qualified open space. We're in agreement with the conditions of approval. I would imagine many of you when this was annexed and zoned, you saw this. I can't remember the date, but it was October of 2021. If you go to the site plan, or the area. Now you see my technology or my lack thereof.
Still won't point.
It doesn't point very well.
No.
So the commercial lot is in the northeast corner, and the development agreement talks about that having a fence, fencing that area. Our envision of what that development agreement was talking about, because the landscape architect did not include it in the landscape plan, is that it go along the easterly boundary, Parker, along that lot and along the Groves drain. I think that's what it is. And then down that common area lot. No, not all the way there, but right there, coming down along the east side of that lot is where we thought that fencing was being required from the development agreement. We didn't see any need for a fence to be along Ustick or internal to that. You have commercial uses in there. You need to see in. Not have a fort around it. I remember years ago when I wrote the first landscape buffer ordinance that the city of Boise and all the other cities adopted, had some new people move to Boise, and they said, you build forts around your subdivisions, but the purpose is to buffer the development. For the most part, everything that is exactly where it was initially in there. We've got multiple product types, as similar to what you just recently saw. We have townhouses, we have single-family housing, and we have apartments in this one. We did the most modifications to the apartments when we started looking at where trash enclosures and those kind of things went. It wasn't buildable. And so we moved things around, and to my personal opinion is that we made it a lot better. We have the amenities for those users in that area with the pool and so forth being pretty centrally located to everything that's there. It's walkable, it meets the open space requirements as required by your code and exceeds them, and we're in agreement with the conditions, and I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Parker.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Parker Bodley, Planning and Zoning Department. The action requested from you is approval or denial of the preliminary plat for Trestle Creek. This is one commercial lot, 29 common lots, and 237 dwelling units. That was, I believe, a correction from the original. These are in single-family detached, attached, and multifamily buildings on 163 lots. So looking at the area to the north, there are single-family homes along Ustick, and then to the north of that is the Northland subdivision, which was approved recently this year. To the south is the Merriweather Park subdivision that's zoned RS7. To the east is Canyon County ag land mostly, and to the west is Canyon County. There's a long single-family lot that's mostly ag land. You can see that here. The original annexation included this light industrial piece, which is not going to be part of the plat. In October of 21, this body recommended approval of the annexation and zoning with the all conditions that were listed by staff. And then in December, City Council approved that annexation. The BC, IL, RMH, and RS6 with a development agreement, which we will get into. Correspondence, the building correspondence, compliance with Title IV for the single-family residences and for the commercial buildings. The fire district, this is 1.8 miles from Fire Station 3 with a 5-minute response time. The police department recommending a commitment to fund 0.94 additional officers, 0.3 staff. The current authorized personnel is 144 officers and 66 non-sworn personnel. The closest police department is 5.9, but there are patrol officers in different areas of the city which are often closer. The engineering comments they had some corrections on the plat, right-of-way improvements, improvement projects in the vicinity and frontage improvements, traffic impact analysis. That was part of the staff report. The GIS had revisions to the legal description and street names. I believe those were submitted today. Comment from VRT, consider that we should consider providing a pathway along the lateral, as well as other transportation improvements as part of the Communities in Motion 2050 plan. The plat is shown here. This is 42.28 acres. There are 96 fourplex units, 60 townhouse units. Those are single-family attached units, and then detached units, there's 81. There's 21 common lots. This is 5.56 dwelling units an acre. Looking at the commercial lot, it's about 89,000 square feet. The developer is not planning on developing that. That'll come in as a future development, a commercial builder. The design review would be required for that commercial structure, and it will likely go to the design review committee, depending on the size of that building. Looking at the RMH lots, so the townhouse lots, the smallest proposed is 2660. The maximum RMH lot, the fourplexes are all on one lot, and that's 295,000 square feet. The minimum allowed lot width is 30 feet. The gross density, looking at each piece individually, multifamily is 14.16 dwelling units an acre. The townhouses are 7.6. Together, that's 10.12. So that's the RMH zoned pieces. Design review is required for the RMH zone for developments of 3 or more units. That includes townhouses and the fourplexes. The rest of the property is zoned RS6. You can see the plat overlaid on the zoning. The minimum proposed lot size is 6,000. The maximum is 9,623. And those lot sizes meet the requirements for the RS6 zone. The gross density for the single-family detached product, the RS6 zone, is 3.67 dwelling units an acre, which meets the zoning standards for that. Going back to the development agreement that was part of the annexation, there was a concept plan for that within that development agreement, which this proposed subdivision substantially complies with. There were specific conditions for non-permitted uses in the IL zone that are not part of the subdivision, as well as requirements for a 20-foot landscape strip and a 6-foot fence along the northeast boundary of the BC zone parcel. The applicant had mentioned the fencing. The landscape plan does show a 20-foot landscape strip. We will be requiring fencing along the boundary of that commercial property. The open space, this development over 5 acres, so they would be required to provide 15% in open space. This provides 6.92 acres, which is 18.21%. 6.29 acres, 92 acres includes 50% of the landscape buffer as allowed per code. And it excludes some of the drainage pond areas that are in the open space area. So the open space meets the qualified amount per code. Parking provided, there's total parking requirement for the 94-plex units is 202 spaces. 96 of those are required to be covered. The guest parking for the townhouse units is 30 spaces. That's the required amount. The total amount of parking in the development is 245 spaces. 96 of those are covered. In addition to that, so the ADA spaces and 20 bicycle spaces are not included in the parking amount, but are required. The stamped landscape plan is still being reviewed and will staff is requiring the fencing to be included on that landscape plan, as was mentioned. The elevations shown here, those are in the staff report as well. The 4 plexes, there's 4 different elevation styles. And then the 2 pictures on the right, those are the townhouse styles. The recommended conditions are in the staff report. Again, the 6-foot fence is part of those conditions, and then all the conditions required from engineering. And any that you wish to add, a potential motion is there for you, and I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for staff? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to public testimony for this item. Madam Clerk, please go through the sign-up
Chair,
list.
we have one speaker, Daniel Boogley.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Boogley. I've resided at 7493 Eustick Road for over 30 years. I did a traffic study myself this evening, and it only took me 3 minutes. I could not turn left out of my driveway. I had to turn right and go down on 11th, which is open. I could not go down north side as I intended to come to town, but I'm sure a couple thousand new neighbors won't affect that. There's lots of talk about density tonight. At a city council meeting concerning another subdivision on Franklin recently, it was decided not to put houses within 300 feet of Chinden, but at the end of my driveway, Eustick, which is also going to go to 5 lanes, 8 houses per acre right up to the road was approved. Also, the developer, 2 years ago, I asked for a berm with trees and a fence. I was told we can't do berms anymore because they take too much water. I've noticed over the years where I've done landscaping with rocks, they don't require any water. The fence, the developer does not want to build the fence. They didn't want to build it 2 years ago. The mayor promised me I would get a fence. Again, I would intend on having a fence there. And if there's any possibility of a discussion on a berm, I would still like as much privacy as possible. Furthermore, lighting concerns me. If there's going to be a commercial area right next to my home, I don't want to see lights, bright lights in my windows at night. Development and destruction are all the same to me. Density, in many cities, they go up in town, and here we destroy all the farmland. I don't approve of any of that. And the idea of the commercial mix in the middle of the subdivisions, I think is insane. You may have a little store where you're going to go get your soda pop and your cigarettes, but you're not going to get your groceries. You're going to go into town to get your groceries. I don't see any of this as being well planned. I see people making a buck and destroying our rural way of life in Canyon County. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it?
That's all.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak for, against, or undecided on this item this evening? Now is your time. Come on up.
It was kind of hard, I'm sorry. Priscilla Sims, 7596 East Shields Drive, Napa. I don't know which one it was, but the description of the plot, I guess. We're in Meriwether and wondering where it connects with Meriwether, or if it does.
Yep.
Sorry? Okay.
Yeah, he can let you know.
Also, on your parking page, the one that had the parking on it and the parking that was provided. That one. I'm not sure what the black lines or the black squares are. Is that the parking?
I believe those are covered spaces, if I'm, okay, the applicant will address that question as well.
Okay, all right, thank you.
That's it? Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Yep, come on up. Name and address, and we're trying to get them on the record, so if you could state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Aspen Bugley. I live at 7493 Eustic Road.
Thank you.
I do have concerns in regards with the traffic. I thought that in regards with the plot plan itself that they had spoke about having another road as an exit. The access towards the landscape, is there going to be mail? Is it a single point of access for people at the front? So we stop wasting our post office's time. And then in regards with the northeast corner where our property runs adjacent to, we're going to be diagonal from that. And I like that the landscaper did leave that space open, but I do have concerns in regards with the lighting, the time frame, and awareness of that, because, yeah, it's not really functional to take away somebody's lifestyle because the growth is what I feel. Thank you for hearing my voice.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience who would like to speak for, against, or undecided on this item?
Can you answer the questions before you decide?
Yes, we'll have the applicant back up. He'll go through the questions that were asked, and then if we have any, we'll grill staff as well and the applicant. Yep. Okay, come on up, Mr. Applicant.
For the record, Kent Brown, 3161 East Springwood. The black spaces, let's talk about the black spaces. So in the green spaces, the black spaces are still landscaped, but they're storm drainage. So there are depressions in there.
Yeah, we need to speak to this.
Sorry, smack me around. So any place that you see those black spaces, they're either subsurface or they're depressions where storm drainage goes. So there was a question about where Meriwether sits next to that. Meriwether is right on the very bottom of the screen that you can see there with a connection a road connection into Meriwether. Trying to remember what creek that is that's between us. Yeah, so that stays in between us, and we're on the north side of that. There was a question about the fencing or a berm along there. The conditions in the development agreement didn't speak to us doing a berm. I remember that just hanging out in the audience, waiting for my application to come up when this came forward as a part of the annexation, and there was the discussion from the neighbors, Daniel and his wife, about that. And we have to stay out of that lateral because it's a ditch users type of thing, and the fencing that we end up putting close to that has to meet what the ditch company's looking at. We're complying with the development agreement. This is different, at least for the audience to understand, than the previous application. We're annexed in zone, and we're here talking about the subdivision that's being brought forward that matches what was realistically submitted before. In the staff report, there's also a concept. Realistically, as you look at the locations of the stub streets and the street structure and everything, it's the same except in the multifamily. And that just kind of moved a little bit, which we felt made it flow better and made it a little more usable neighborhood. So the streets are all in the same locations with the same stub streets that feed the other areas. And the apartments are up next to the approved area for light industrial. Light industrial can be multiple kinds of industrial users, and that being located on Ustick Road is a lot more appropriate. The location of the townhomes, the single family attached, allows people to move through the development, and I think is a good location too, with larger lots next to Meriwether and the adjoining neighbors, which again matches that concept. Parking is all in the multifamily. It's not in any of those other places. And the darker places is where the covered parking would be in the multifamily. Did I get everything, Ron? Mr. Chairman?
Mailboxes. Where are you going to put your mailboxes? Or do you know?
Throughout the development, they're going to be in different locations.
Are you going to have like a cluster or anything?
We're required to do cluster boxes. We don't do individual deliveries anymore. In fact, I think it's been almost 10 years since the last single delivery subdivision I did. But everything is being clustered, and the post office is a part of that approval of that.
Okay, I don't think I had anything else.
There was the concern about the commercial parcel throwing light onto the
Oh, yeah, sorry.
agriculture.
So when that commercial property is approved, it's a application that has to come in, and so then you're going to be looking at what they're doing and the location of the building and where the lights and so forth are being done. This is just creating the land division for that parcel in accordance with that conceptual plan.
That'll get checked at design review.
Yes, correct. And more appropriate when you actually know what's being there. I recently did a subdivision in Meridian, and I was bringing in the final phase, and traffic came up, and I said, you know, it's really interesting. This subdivision was originally approved in 2007, And I've been working on it for 9 years, and it's not like we really have ever taken our pedal off, our foot off the gas and trying to make it go, but large developments take a long time. Most of these things that you guys see come before you, I think, at least when I'm talking to people and my own neighbors, they think that it's going to happen immediately, and it doesn't necessarily happen that way. When I did Meriwether subdivision in its initial, it was a county subdivision, that first phase that butts up to where these people are at. And then the city of Nampa annexed it, and everything else since then in Meriwether was done in the city. You wouldn't have expected that. I think it still took 7 years to do, and I can't remember if there's 4 or 5 phases of that development. So we have to understand that development just doesn't immediately happen. We have a construction season, we build, you have to get your plans approved, and then economy things also happen. So I stand for any questions.
How long do you think this will take in the current environment? Assuming interest rates come down a touch.
I'm sorry, that was a little laughable.
The commercial one is probably one of the harder ones.
Sure.
You need a demand and so forth for that to take place. It's at least 6 or 7 years, in my opinion.
Okay.
I think there's 4 phases in here, and we're lucky to get one every year. So.
Okay. All right, any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, and maybe this might be a question for staff, but the fencing along that drain on the northwest side, northeast side, sorry, along the commercial, whose responsibility is it to fence that lateral? Is it the irrigation district's responsibility, the company, or is it the developers? I mean, or is it fenced already? Because you're going to have kids running up and down and around that area once it's all built out.
And wasn't that one of the Valley Transit and Parks that they kind of wanted that to be a pathway along there? Isn't that part of what was being discussed there, Parker? And when we do those, we usually don't put a fence through the lateral, and it's kind of unusual in Nampa to have one in a lateral, but.
Chairman, I don't believe a pathway is planned along that lateral. It's along the Purdom on the south side.
Okay. Okay.
A pathway is planned.
So do you know who's I mean, do they leave them unfenced, or what's the deal when a development goes up next to a?
It would be on the developer to put in fencing.
Whatever properties back up to that
right.
easement or whatever, they put that
If
fence
it's
along.
required by the irrigation district.
It's required by the irrigation district. But,
If it's required, then
I see.
it is the developer's responsibility.
Okay.
So when we look at, obviously the ditch company likes to burn. You don't put vinyl fence
I
up.
put a vinyl fence up there.
So that's typically this developer likes to put wrought iron if he's putting that up, and
Okay.
it's like a 5-foot fence.
That's all I had.
Yep. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Gardner, second by Kirkman to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, public hearing is closed. What do y'all think?
Well, I think along the same lines as the last one. I mean, one, as Ken had said, this has really been set in stone years ago. We can't come back and start asking him to make changes to it now, and it's a good project. It meets the code, and it meets what we're looking for. It's got the variety of different types of homes, and I think it's really a good plan, and I'd like to see it continue on.
I agree, but I want to ask Daniel some questions because I can.
Good reason.
What's the plans for the improvement of U-Stick? How far along? Do you have any, do you know? And is that us or?
So U-Stick will be us. We are working on the grant applications that I talked about that we should know in the next couple of weeks, whether we get those grant applications. That will likely get us probably to 11th Avenue. And then, as funding becomes available and it becomes a priority, we would widen U-Stick continuing all the way through our boundary on U-Stick would go all the way to Midway or Midland, then it goes over to Caldwell's area. But that's kind of the plan there. If we get that grant, it'll push it closer this direction faster. We have a sewer trunk line that ultimately needs to go out that will help serve this as well, that, there will be construction for that. But widening is likely to come in the future. It's not something we have planned in the CIP currently in this section.
Okay. Anything we can do to help that driveway there and help him get out? Just part of living on a highway that gets more and more
That's
busy.
honestly part of living on a major arterial roadway, that you may not get out of your driveway as quickly as you might like, but the traffic volumes there are not such that it would warrant something, the traffic volumes don't warrant widening today, right now.
Any other comments, discussion? Need to do jumping jacks? Wake up? Okay.
Nothing similar to the last one, same idea. They've been real thoughtful about how they lay out the different types, putting the larger residential down next to Meriwether and putting, like you said, the more density up by U-Stick and by the industrial. It's nicely thought out. And as has been pointed out, it's part of a development agreement, so they can't change the plan. So.
Yeah, the plat, pretty straightforward plat, in my opinion.
I'll make the motion if there's no further discussion. Okay. I move to approve the subdivision preliminary plat approval for Trestle Creek subdivision at 00 and 0 U-Stick Road, 3 parcels totaling 42.28 acres in the BC, RS6, and RMH zoning districts for Kent Brown, representing Endurance Holdings, with recommended conditions, and adopt the potential findings in the staff report.
Second.
Motion by Selman, second by Kehoe to approve the subdivision preliminary plat for Trestle Creek. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you, Kent.
And Chairman, I need a 5-minute recess.
5-minute break. I was going to do it. Yep. Okay, we'll come back in 5 minutes.
Still not enough.
Get back to the meeting, and our third item this evening was an annexation and zoning to RMH, multiple family residential zoning district on 4.6 acres and BN zoning on 3.45 acres, development agreement, planned unit development for 0 and 617 East Greenhurst Road and 2321 Sunny Ridge Road. 3 parcels in the abutting right-of-way to centerline of Sunny Ridge and Greenhurst totaling 8.05 acres for Greenhurst Crossing, a cottage cluster development for Sunny Acre Partners LLC, representing Entrust Group, FBO Patricia A. Schultz, for 42 single-family dwelling units in a cottage cluster alignment fronting common open space and commercial development fronting the roadway. It's the applicant. Hello.
Hello. Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Angie Wood, representing Build Smith at P.O. Box 1422, Boise, Idaho 83701, and part of Sunny Acres Partners. I appreciate your time tonight, and my goal is to basically describe where we've been and where we're headed. We've been at this for several months, but it's our first time in front of you all this evening. I'm joined with my partners making up Sunny Acres Partners, which is Sarah Cunningham, Principal of Ethos Design, Remodel, and Development, Larry Leisure, who's been involved in commercial development both locally and nationally, Aaron Sorensen, Principal of Sorensen Development, also involved in Ethos, and myself, and we operate Build Smith Construction with my husband, Michael Wood. So we're all invested in the future of Idaho. Most of us are local Idahoans and certainly care about what the future is. My children are going to be 5th generation Idahoans, so it's more than just making a stamp on a map and moving forward. Projects that we've been involved with are long-term, and I think most residents are proud to call them spaces and places that they enjoy living in. So it's no secret that people are on the move, and I like this slide because it demonstrates just how intense the focus has been on Idaho and why people are moving here. Quality of life, and it's no exception that Nampa is on the map and focused for people's quality of life. Folks are moving here largely from western states, some eastern states, and they're looking for some housing alternatives and options. So when we first started looking at this project, we looked at Nampa, and the site itself is unique because it's one of the last enclave parcels that's still in the county. Though it's surrounded by multifamily and higher densities, it has not yet been annexed, and I'll go into those details in a bit. But first, I wanted to highlight kind of how we got to where we are and why our process, being developer, owner, and decision makers, has been able to be a little bit different than how a lot of developers might go about their projects. We wanted to have a charrette with neighbors and community members, which is really just another fancy way of saying we wanted to solicit people's opinion before we went ahead and proposed a project for folks to react to. We had that meeting last spring at the rec center, and I'm going to get into what we decided. But we look at the site, which is located at Greenhurst and Sunny Ridge. It's surrounded by not only available utilities and public services, but also recreational areas to the north and the south, and borders schools, and it's in close proximity to commercial areas where most people go to purchase their goods and services and support those along 12th. So here's kind of a timeline. When we went to the rec center, that was back in April. We then had our neighborhood meeting with our immediate neighbors, all along collaborating with staff and having formal pre-application conference meetings and getting feedback on our plan. We were especially excited when we heard and learned more about the cottage cluster ordinance that we, I believe, and maybe planning staff will elaborate later, but I believe we're the first ones that are actually anticipate using that here within City of Nampa zoning. So within that that first community meeting, we solicited feedback on like really treating it as a blank slate and whether people wanted multifamily, whether they wanted attached, detached, two-story, to get a feel for it. And we also got feedback that people wanted to see services and wanted to see commercial development along Greenhurst. There were a couple of surprises, including like the visuals. People were definitely pro porches, pro covered parking. That was a lot of, that was not surprising, and it's a lot of the same themes that we're hearing tonight with these other projects. So, and our hope of all of this earlier work was so that we could have a collaboration to make this place be consistent with the area and a place that people want to live. You can see that this corner is kind of, while it does currently have residential housing on it, it is a blank place waiting for there to be structure and making sense of this, what could be a prominent corner. Can you guys hear okay? So if we look at, this is an aerial view really showing that this is in effect an infill site. You've got Skyview Park and High School, the Wilson Creek area and associated parks and ponds, other parks, and then bookended by the commercial area. And we recognize that it might be unique that we're not also accompanied with the detailed engineering and subdivision plan, but that's because this area is unique in its presence of bedrock, and other adjacent neighborhoods, developments have, we want to basically wait to get that engineering, knowing that we have your support of annexing this property. So the cottage cluster project is really envisioned conceptually to be within access to these different amenities, and with us requesting both BN and RMH zoning. That would mean that there's central courtyards for the dwellings, that the roadways would be accommodated within easements, and then we're also considering its touch to adjacent parcels and surrounding uses. When you look more closely, you can see that these, and these are highlighted in more depth in your packet, but we've got landscaping and defined entry features. We do have surplus parking that's met through both structured parking and surface parking, active and passive recreation areas, and we heard loud and clear about the concerns about connected pathways and making sure that people could visually see their neighbor and connect in that way, and so we've avoided any blind corners or dead space. You'll see that there's ample landscaping areas, those with buffers, and we actually exceed the required landscaping even though this is a smaller site. We're using Firewise and native landscaping.
Time.
And basically, in
Another
conclusion,
minute, wrap up.
okay,
Yep.
sorry. I want to say that we are generally supportive of most of what's summarized in the staff report and those suggested considerations. In looking at the housing guidelines, the comprehensive plan, and the zoning ordinance, we've worked hard to both listen to the neighbors as partners, but also neighbors that plan on being there for a long time. And we wanted to thank yourselves for your time and thank staff for their feedback and ongoing conversation, along with the neighboring residents. So I will stand for questions, noting that I might call upon my partners as well if other questions come up in their technical expertise. Thank you.
Thank you. So you said roadways would be, all the interior roadways are parceled out in easements. Is there an association that like takes care of those roadways and
Yes.
maintains them and stuff?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Chairman and Commissioners, regarding those easements. That's part of our history of the different developments that we've been supportive of. We have in-depth experience managing those, both associations having to do with mixed-use developments, to make sure that those would be managed appropriately, meeting the needs of both uses, the commercial and the residents. And it's actually the best way to do it with this tighter cluster development and the way that the parcels will ultimately, what we anticipate being subdivided out.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Doug?
Yeah, Commissioner Doug Critchfield, Principal Planner. So before you this evening really is just a consideration of zoning. We're not looking at the preliminary plat at this point, but just the zoning. It involves two properties owned by the Shaw family and the Schultz property. And it is in total 8 acres. That includes the roadway sections as well. The BN zoning district has approximately 3.45 acres dedicated to that zoning district, and the RMH is at 4.6. That's the proposal in front of you. So this is a view looking from the northeast to the southwest of the property. There are some existing residential structures on the property. The most of it is vacant. And there's a residential structure on the Shaw property as well. Sunny Ridge Road and Greenhurst Road have a signalized intersection at the corner there, and they're both busy roads. Here's a view of that signalized intersection, and they're both fairly busy roads. In terms of the staff recommendation, as we've reviewed the zoning proposal and the annexation proposal, it meets and appears to meet all requirements of state code and Nampa City Code and the comprehensive plan, and staff can reasonably recommend approval of the project. In terms of the history of the project, there were some pre-applications meetings with the applicant in March, June, and in October. It's currently under Canyon County and enclaved, and it was determined by the engineering division that there's insufficient information at this time to determine if a traffic impact study is warranted, but given the number of units and the fact that it's a signalized intersection, it's unlikely that there'll be mitigation required. However, IDT is asked to take a look at the proposal for the business that comes in the BN zoning district to determine if there's any other mitigation required on this site. In terms of the services, they're all available to the site, and there's capacity to serve the proposed subdivision in the concept subdivision, I should say. In terms of the comprehensive plan, it's high-density residential land use designation. Within that designation, it allows for cottage development to occur. It also, the comprehensive plan allows for commercial development on frontage roads in section 543 of the comprehensive plan. The density, potential density on this site is over 8 dwelling units per acre. I think the applicant came in at 8.3 with 42 units within that area. The qualified open space is also proposed in the future, appears to exceed the open space requirements, but again, we'll do that analysis when the preliminary plat comes in. And then there's ample landscaping on the site. In terms of the adjacent zoning, so this area is in a fairly densely populated area. If you'll note to the north, there's a PUD, it's the Stone Ridge subdivision, fairly tight subdivision with small lots zoned RS6, and residential acres to the south. But to the east is a PUD, and this is a similar type of cottage development on the other side of Sunny Ridge Road. It's Cottages Subdivision number 2, very small lots and tightly compact units, but this subdivision did not come in underneath the current code. The subdivision that's being proposed eventually here in the future for this site will come underneath the code, and that code is very detailed about what happens within a cottage subdivision to make it livable. The schools are in close proximity to the site, and as was mentioned by the applicant, there are several amenities within a mile radius of the site. So we've indicated in the staff report what the zoning districts are for. In essence, the BN zoning district is a neighborhood zoning district, so it's intended to have services that are readily available by walking or biking, or and they're to service the local area rather than a large commercial type of development. And the RMH zoning district is intended to be dense development. You can see here as this overlays in a closer look at the zoning around it and the types of units to the south, there's quite a few multifamily units in that RD development, and over on River Oaks Drive, there are townhouses in that area, and as was mentioned about the other type of development. So it does appear to have a fit within this location. It's proposed that this be a planned unit development, and that's required for cottage cluster because there are exceptions to the code. The planned unit development allows the commission to agree to those different types of alterations to the code and variations in the normal zoning code. And that's accommodated both in the comprehensive plan as well as in the Nampa City Code. And also in the Nampa City Code, it allows for exceptions to district regulations. So in the RMH, for example, again, allowing cottage and cluster housing development. And here are the definitions. This is in the staff report, the definitions of what those mean. And it allows for differences of units, zoning, and lot sizes as well. It's proposed that we, in condition 21 of the staff report, that we enter into a development agreement to secure the number of cottage homes at 42, to secure interior roads and common areas and open space layout that the applicant has proposed this evening, and a subdivision and neighborhood commercial pad is shown in the staff report as well. All of these would need to be in adherence with the current city codes. We did have some correspondence on this, which is stated in your staff report. In short, the building department standard language was given to us that it needs to follow the city ordinances, particularly Title IV of the building regulations. And I mentioned the comments from ITD. That's right, I keep mixing up that acronym. In terms of the code compliance, there are several weeds and vehicles and things on the property that need to be taken care of. That was mentioned in the staff report and also in the conditions, that those things need to be handled before development or before annexation occurs on this property. In the Nampa Fire Department is 0.2 miles, fire station number 2. It's about a 2-minute response time. And engineering had several comments about the property, the conditions of the streets, and the right-of-way dedication requirements for Greenhurst Road. The property is not in a 100-year floodplain, and drainage plan and preliminary plat are required. So in terms of the findings, these are stated in your staff report. I would be glad to review these. Do I need to review those, Rodney, with the commission?
Probably okay.
Okay. I'd be glad to review these with you if you have any questions about the findings on the project. These are all in state code. So I will, I have those available, and so we'll just move through those findings. And then in terms of the findings for a planned unit development, again, it has to apply with adopted city codes and has services and utilities available, and infrastructure improvements are required at the time of construction. It meets the intent of the comprehensive plan, and it does meet city code in terms of the proposed development. The conditions of approval, there's 21 of them. Those are, again, stated in your staff report, and I did highlight number 21, which is the development agreement. And I have a potential motion, and we'd be glad to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Doug?
Ask one. It's a little off base, but it's pertinent, I think. They're planning on having an EV charging station. Have we had anybody else propose one of those? I think it's a great idea.
I know of.
With electric vehicles coming up the road and or down the road, whatever, should that be something we should encourage to get the infrastructure in when they're building these subdivisions and things like that?
Commissioner, we can certainly look into that and just start exploring that option. There's not any, that I know of, there's not anything in codes across the valley for that. And I don't know, how reasonable it is to, I don't know the cost of that and,
Yeah, I don't either,
and
but
the
maybe-
infrastructure
like you
that's
said, let's
needed.
explore it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Let's get ahead of the game so we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, happy to go look into it and see what we need to do.
Anybody else feel like we should, or?
EVs are just a fad.
Oh.
Sorry, Chairman.
I agree. Or not, it's like a fast golf cart. Okay. Any other questions for the staff this evening? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to public testimony. And if you have the list, we'll go ahead and
We have
start.
one speaker signed up, Buddy Confer.
All right, come on up. State your name and address for the record and tell us what's on your mind.
Contractor in me wants to fix that thing. I've been sitting back there, a piece of tile wanting to fall down. I'm happy to do that if someone has a ladder, but my name's Bud Comfort Jr. I reside at 8825 Vic Lane here in Middleton, and I'm here to represent NeighborWorks, who owns 73 units here in Nampa off 211 North Gateway. NeighborWorks is a nonprofit housing, community-minded developer who's served the Treasure Valley for the last 42 years. And we provide an array of housing services from home buyer education here in Nampa, down payment assistance here in Nampa, and throughout through our nonprofit lending arm. But tonight, I'm here to speak on behalf of our housing services, where really the goal there is to help people obtain, maintain, and retain their home. I'm here to show support and approval of the annexation and zoning for the cluster cottage developments. I think one of the largest barriers in obtaining housing in Nampa is the lack of areas within the city that allow for that medium and higher density for single family, including the cottage developments. The PUD here before you tonight, I think, helps with the blueprint and that smart growth that we've heard about tonight as well, as it relates to how to treat these infill developments and allow for housing to be more easily developed, to make the best use of the existing infrastructure and the investment that the city's already put in these areas for our growing community. This vision fits well within what NeighborWorks has done within the last 9 years, which is really why I'm here, just to support where the city's heading with this. And we've have single-family development, home ownership, what we call our pocket neighborhoods. The purpose of our pocket neighborhoods is really to produce high-quality, obtainable housing with a variety of housing types for our community. And these pocket neighborhoods for us grew out of a desire for many to live close to where they live, work, play, and worship. To date, NeighborWorks has completed 8 cottages, and I'd love to show you some of those. And I would love to see Nampa take a part of that and be a part of that forward movement. The idea of porches and front doors facing each other, bikeable, this walkable path. The last time I was here in front of you, it was to show support in the annexation, or at least the overlay of the area-specific plan of Highway 16, Highway 2026, which was approved by council earlier this year. The main purpose of that area plan to the north of Nampa was 1, to provide measured growth for the community, 2, to provide, to enable a community to reduce this neighborhood sprawl, to protect our agriculture. The food we grow, the comment there at that, with the food we grow is just important as the people that we'll house, and I believe that this project does both of that. The obtainable housing is important for our communities, and that identified in our most recent community health needs assessment. So tonight, I've served the Nampa area for 15 years with Mercy Housing, now with NeighborWorks, and I would strongly recommend that you approve this annexation, and I would love to see cluster developments and cottages come to Nampa. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is that everyone on the sign-up sheet? Madam Clerk? Is that everybody on the sign-up sheet? Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak for, against, or undecided on this application this evening? Okay. Any comments from the applicant? Last words? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved by Kehoe, seconded by Gardner to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, public hearing's closed.
You know, we seem to have a whole pattern here tonight. All these things are just what the city is asking for.
I love it.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for one of these cottage things to come into the city. I was going to say cottage industry, but I knew that wasn't right. These pocket neighborhoods, yeah. And I think this is a great location for it, too.
Yeah,
Just the
yeah.
amenities, parks, all that.
Yep. Sounds good to me.
Motion, Jeff. All right, then. I will. I'll move to recommend approval of the annexation. And if no one else has any comment, I just want to make sure.
No, I think you're good.
I move to recommend approval of the annexation of zoning to RMH zoning district on 4.6 acres and BN zoning district on 3.45 acres, development agreement and planned unit development for 0 and 617 East Greenhurst Road and 2321 Sunny Ridge Road. 3 parcels and the abutting right-of-way to center line of Sunny Ridge Road and East Greenhurst Road totaling 8.05 acres for Greenhurst Crossing, a cottage cluster, that's what it is. Cottage cluster development located in northwest for Sunny Acre Partners LLC, representing Entrust Group FBO Patricia Schultz, with all conditions listed in the staff report, and to adopt the findings of approval as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Motion by Kirkman, a second by Morgan to recommend approval of this item. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. That'll move on to City Council. Thanks for your patience and your time this evening.
Thanks for thinking ahead on the EV, too.
You buying an EV?
No, but
No.
I'm probably going to have to sooner or later.
I'll sell you one.
Like yours?
I love it. I won't. I'll sell it to you for a price.
Never mind. I knew.
All right. Fourth item on the agenda this evening is a conditional use permit for an unlisted land use for rental or sale of storage containers in a BC zoning district at 03602 and 3610 at Garrity Boulevard, totaling 1.39 acres for Chase. Hyde? Anybody? Hyde? Okay, thank you. Representing Sunshower Holdings LLC, William T. Brown, for storage of empty storage containers for rent or sale on approximately back half of the site with 1 technician on the property. Manufactured home sales anticipated for the front half of the property, a permitted use in the BC zone. Mr. Applicant, the floor
Mark
is
Butler,
yours.
1675 East Bishop Way, Eagle. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this property is located on the north side of Garrity, adjacent to North 36th Street. Currently, it's Flagship Motors. And to give you a little bit of history, I've been a land use planner for a long time, and I really don't work anymore.
Congratulations.
Pardon me?
Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, I do work, but not much. Anyway, the owner of the property is a friend of mine, Tom and Lisa Brown. I've known them for many years. They started Flagship Motors several years ago. And my daughter is their real estate agent. They put the property up for sale a few months ago, and the buyers, who are the applicants, wanted to have a different use there. They want to sell manufactured homes in the front and use 20% of the property to store their Boise boxes, and we'll get into that in a minute. But what happened was I didn't help until Thursday. The applicant, not knowing the process, I don't believe submitted enough information, just my opinion, for staff to really make a decision like I want. Is that a good way to put it? So I got the application, the staff report on Thursday, and it's a recommendation for denial. So I'm going to go through the details and tell you what work I've done since I got the staff report. So this is a aerial showing the property. This is the used car lot. This is the property bounded in blue. And they want to take the back portion of the property and store their Boise boxes there. Next. Oh, how does it work? I'm of the days of transparencies. Remember those? Toward him? Oh. That took me a minute.
We'll give you a minute back. It's okay.
There we go. Okay, so looking at the property then, this is a 6-foot high vinyl fence. That shows the vinyl fence. And next. Oh, sorry.
You're talking to yourself.
These are the Boise boxes. They're not, it isn't a storage facility, isn't shipping containers. They look very nice. You've probably seen them around town. These are the type of manufactured homes they plan to sell. So in my opinion, it'll look a lot nicer. Nothing against Tom's cars. This is an example of their storage yard that they have right now, one of the storage yards. They keep the Boise boxes nice and neat. These are examples of self-storages. I'm sure you've seen those before. We feel that they really don't look the same, but in talking with Rodney, I understand the view from the comprehensive plan that he was trying to express in the staff report. So this is the plan for the front of the property to have the manufactured homes, and then to have the Boise boxes behind with the fence in this location. You'll see a recommendation that it be screened, because typically you have your mini storage, self-storage units screened. Our situation is interesting because the property to the north is owned by Qualitree, and it's industrial zone. They're a great business, but it's an absolute mess. I mean, you can see piles of stuff up there and big trucks and everything. So it's interesting to me that the staff report says screen the boxes from the rest, when in our view, we want to screen what's behind us from us. So the way they've laid out this property was to have the Boise boxes along the back, then the fence, and the manufactured homes along the front, so that you have a lot better view. So if you're looking at the manufactured homes, you can't really see what's behind on the industrial property. And again, this area here, you didn't have this site plan in your presentation. You have it now as part of the public record. In the staff report, it said that the applicant said 50% of the property is going to be for Boise box storage. That's not correct. It's 20%. So it's a small ancillary part of the whole site. So there's two findings that need to be established for recommending approval, which both relate. One relates to the comprehensive plan, and one relates basically to sightliness. Findings number 1 and 2, and staff pointed out that they felt the other findings would be met. But the main finding, which appears to be a concern, is that you want to, and I get it, I've written comp plans before, I've written quite a few of them. It's on the city council for I won't say what city for 4 years. And it's a big goal of a city, as you all know, to preserve your commercial property. That's where your tax base is. If you get overburdened with residential and not enough commercial, your tax base gets skewed. And I understand that. And I'm hoping that you can look at the comprehensive plan as understanding that it wants to preserve commercial land, but in this location here, we're talking about a very small portion of BC zoned land. And so, thank you. So I took the comprehensive plan land use map and then blew it up and put a little arrow there so you can see all that gray. So you have the pink for the commercial and the gray for industrial. Oh, thank you. All that gray around us is industrial. The property right behind us is industrial. I believe we have a good buffer with the boxes between us and the industrial. And the other thing about this use is comparing it with the car lot is with regard to businesses and, you know, how does this help business? They're going to have about the same number of employees, and it's the same type of business customer as the car lot. Tom has people look online, they find the car they want, they could be coming here from Melbo, wherever, they come to the site, they buy a car. The same situation is going to be here for the manufactured homes. So you're not, in my opinion, impacting at all your commercial operation, your commercial business that's here. And I believe that the back part provides a very good buffer. So I contacted Nikki with ITD, and I will be done in a minute, if I could have an extra minute. I contacted Nikki with ITD, Idaho Transportation Department, and I spoke with her, and I said, look, there are several conditions in here that staff copied from your letter. And she quoted IDAPA, Idaho Administrative Procedures Act, which governs ITD, and I talked to her about it. I'm somewhat familiar with it. And I said, you know, it looks to me like you're looking at this as it's a new development. It's not. We're not changing the use. The impact is going to be about the same. And I know IDAPA has provisions of workability, let's say, when you're not impacting, you're not adding additional trips. And she said, oh, exactly. I just wrote down the worst case scenario. I said, can you put something in your letter that says that I'm working with you and that we can have a condition that instead of says, take all your driveways off of Garrity, which it says, and only come in off of 36th Street where there's no turnaround actually, that a condition that says comply with ITD. We don't have a problem with complying with ITD, but me getting this on Thursday, I haven't had a chance to meet with them. But we will comply with ITD. So I've asked that on the second bullet point here, that ITD conditions 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, which are specific to taking out driveways, replacing them with curb cuts, just say that comply with ITD requirements for access, so we can work with ITD on that. And on the first 5, I spoke with Daniel Badger about the well and septic, and I said, well, because they're not building anything, they're not adding on to anything, they're just moving cars off and bringing on manufactured homes, do they have to abandon their well and septic? And he's here, so he said no, if they do redevelopment, then they have to abandon and then connect to municipal services. Unless there's a safety issue or something, you know, a septic that gets condemned by Central Health District, or here your Southwest District Health. So I asked to clarify that 1 through 5, because some of those are planning requirements. You know, are we going to have to pave? Do we have to put in streetlights? That kind of stuff. We're not developing, we're not redeveloping. We're just moving cars off and the manufacturers' homes in. So number 1, just want clarification, maybe from staff, that 1 through 5 aren't triggering all kinds of things that would get triggered with development. Number 2, I asked you to put in the 1 condition from ITD, and hopefully you have the letter. I know Rodney has it. And the last one that says, please replace, I've asked, it recommends screening the Boise boxes from the manufactured homes, and I've asked for that to be removed and that you find that the 6-foot-high tall vinyl fence is sufficient. And if you have any questions, appreciate your time.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay.
This time.
No, this
Thank
time
you.
we'll hear from staff and talk to you again. Rodney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. For the record, Rodney Ashby, Planning and Zoning Director. I think the applicant has done a really good job of just summarizing some of my concerns and even the issue at hand. He's correct in stating that some of the details I didn't have up front, and so there's a little more clarity in just the last couple of days. So we'll kind of walk through that, but just again, an emphasis on the manufactured homes being sold from the front of the property. That's a permitted use that's not before you for consideration. But let me jump into, there's the couple of, or the findings and the staff conclusions, and I'll get into those details. But I'll also jump into the next slide in just a second about the just the site-specific conditions that maybe have changed and might influence your decision. So the comprehensive plan, you can see here a little more closely. This is the commercial. As he's stated, clearly the industrial behind it is significant. There's a lot of industrial. I think one of the main things to just consider is the comprehensive plan's view about the corridor into our downtown from the freeway and from other communities. And so that's the reason we have that as commercial, trying to enhance that corridor a little bit. But it is currently zoned BC, and there you can see the zoning. And to the north, Qualitree, and he's absolutely correct. It's very industrial. To the northeast, though, is the R6 zoning, a single-family subdivision. And then to the south is the Garrity Boulevard, it's Zone BC, and the Garrity RV Park, Moxie Java. To the east is BC Dick's Car Corral Auto Sales. To the west is BC American Construction Supply Store. And sewer and water services are available to the site if they were needing it. And just for clarity's sake, I can start from the very first question about those conditions. Absolutely, those conditions about connecting to utilities are dependent on development of the site, which this doesn't trigger. Sorry, there's a little closer view of that, and then the aerial view of the properties. So, conditional use permits are generally permitted use as long as you can mitigate some of the impacts to the neighboring properties. And so there's some expectation of approval, but in this situation, it's just a little bit different. Here's the criteria for approval that you have to find to approve this, and then relocated to a new location or even stored on a different property, not on this one. So I wasn't really sure where to fit that into our land use table. And so this section of code allows me to say, well, if it doesn't clearly fit into the land use table, you might just want to provide require a CUP and it come before this body for approval. So that's what I did, and part of the reason I did that is because of some of the concerns expressed by City Council in the past about storage and about its impact on the economy and on providing services to those locations. So I'll get into that in a little bit, but first, the correspondence from the building department, you have those there. These are primarily based on whether it develops or not. Right? It's not going to be required to do anything unless they're building a building. Let's see, Nampa Engineering Division, their comments, I've already kind of spoken about that. Those are dependent on the development. Nampa Fire District, they had specific conditions primarily if the property develops. And then finally, Idaho Transportation Department's, their comments there. So staff analysis, this lot is designated as commercial. I know it's near industrial, but it is designated on the comprehensive plan as commercial. The subject parcel is surrounded by a mix of industrial, commercial, and residential uses. It's quite a mix over there. The proposed land use is storage of empty storage containers for use throughout the valley when needed. And he already showed you some of these, but I found this from their website. I thought it was helpful to kind of see those boxes and see how big they are, or how they might look on the property. So 3 different sizes there that they listed on their website. So public interest. This is where I want to just highlight the reasons behind the concerns from City Council about storage containers. Public self-storage creates very few jobs for the amount of land required for the business. It's not as economically beneficial to the city to essentially store people's things. Granted, this is different than that. I don't want to imply that this is a self-storage, but some of the principles you may want to consider. So public self-storage uses land in locations that could be utilized for a better use. Number 3, public self-storage provides relatively less tax revenue to provide services to that property than do most other commercial and industrial land uses. And 4th, the appearance of storage units near residential and along major roadways in the community has typically been unappealing with little landscaping and almost no design standards. And so that they wanted to improve the appearance of these storage facilities. So I've highlighted here just storage. And again, I don't mean to imply that this is public self-storage, but I did want to just point out, this is the location of the site, and this is a property across the street that we're dealing with right now because they're storing boats and RVs and not a permitted use, and the lot hasn't been improved. So a condition of our code is that they have to pave any surface that vehicles traverse on a commercial property. So that's a condition that we're going to have to see complied with if this project gets approved.
I'm sorry, is that on any commercial property?
That's on commercial property.
Any vehicle that traverses any commercial property has to be paved?
If it's being developed, right, in the city.
If it's being developed?
Mm-hmm. So if there's a portion of the property that's not being developed and they're not utilizing it for the business, they don't have to improve that property. That let's say they have a field or something right next to them, and they're not developing the entire property, they're just developing a portion of it, they have to make the improvements to the site where they are developing the property.
But this property is not being developed. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting your presentation.
So I guess when I said developed, I kind of misspoke. It's being utilized for the land use that we're talking about, or getting approval for, okay? So if you needed parking or something, let's say no buildings are being developed, but parking is being placed, then you have to pave that parking area because a vehicle is traversing or parking on it. That's code.
This really could be an interesting discussion.
Okay, and there's a couple of other storage locations in the area. These are the conditions of approval. We've already kind of gone over those things from other agencies and their recommendations. This is the change, essentially, that the applicant has requested for ITD. The last comment here, it used to be number 14 back here. The last condition here is that the applicant shall screen the storage containers from view of the public right-of-way, and essentially meeting our design standards. I didn't know that there was an existing fence that was already screening that area and that back 20% now. And so we wouldn't require that they install a brand new fence if the fence is existing. So I just want to make that clear to you, that might be needing to be adjusted tonight because of that already existing. So here's an example of one that we required they put in fencing over on north side, kind of near the sewer plant, because they had outdoor storage. And our design standards say that it has to be 2 materials, it has to be decorative, it has to go, it's a little more significant than just a vinyl fence. But again, it's an existing fence. We're not going to require that they go through that process if this gets approved. So I developed findings for denial, and you can see those in your staff report and on the screen here. I'm going to kind of just walk through them pretty quickly. Essentially, the comprehensive plan identifies these corridors into our downtown as really needing to be beautified and economic development being a priority in these areas and creating jobs. So that's a big part of it. I'm sure you've read this in your staff report, but again, gateways, this is a major gateway that's identified. So the conclusion, I'll just kind of highlight the conclusion and not go through all the details or the facts that I've stated in the staff report. The Nampa Comprehensive Plan does not address the specific type of business being proposed, but does generally speak about the desire to limit and ensure better design of public self-storage developments, though not completely prevent all storage from being developed. There appears to not be any additional buildings proposed to be constructed on the site, and the portion of the property is being utilized for storing empty containers would not constitute redevelopment or infill. Though the comprehensive plan does suggest support for general commercial uses in the city, the language appears to imply the need to provide needed services and jobs. The proposed use does not appear to provide a significant increase in jobs or needed services, but rather is proposed to act as a location to simply store shipping containers. The comprehensive plan does not substantially support this type of development and instead encourages redevelopment of properties to create jobs, products, and services. So again, comprehensive plan is our guide, and this is my interpretation of what is being said in the comprehensive plan. If you find otherwise, you just need to clearly state that tonight in your findings. The second one there is that the design, construction, operation, and maintenance of the property and project will not adversely impact the intended character and appearance of the general vicinity. Due to the nature of the structures being stored on the property and the lack of any significant improvements to the property, the design, construction, operation, and maintenance of the property and project will adversely impact the intended character and appearance of the general vicinity. The use of the property will adversely impact the residential properties nearby because of its industrial nature and appearance. And then 3, that the proposed use will be served adequately by essential public facilities and services. The proposed use will be served adequately. Number 4, that the proposed use will not be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community. For some reason in your staff report that was transmitted to you, it left off the second half of this conclusion. So I'm just going to, again, read it. The proposed use will be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community because it is a use that does not result in significant jobs and does not help to enhance the corridor or to encourage greater economic development. The commercial services provided will serve the entire valley, not just Nampa residents and businesses, but City of Nampa will provide city services without significant offsets from redevelopment investment of the site. As a result, other higher valued commercial developments in the, for some reason I can't see that, in the area are offsetting at a greater rate the cost of providing city services to the area. And then finally, the last one, the proposed use will not involve activities or processes, materials, equipments, and conditions of operation that will be detrimental to any persons, property, or general welfare by reason of excessive traffic noise, smoke, fumes, glare, or odors. And I just found that the proposed use will not involve activities that would cause these things. So that one complies. So here's a couple of potential motions for your consideration. If you do approve it, I would just highlight that those proposed conditions need to be looked at closely. If you want to go with what the applicant has suggested, we need to look at those conditions and not just take what I put in the staff report. If you agree that this does not comply with our conditions of approval, then you could just read off what I've stated here under deny. And I would stand for questions.
Rodney, help me out here. On, I believe it's Franklin, there's the, huh? What?
You talking about that RV park on Franklin?
No, but across from the RV park on Franklin, there is a storage unit that looks like they take the containers from trains that go cross-country, and they load the container up, take it down to the rail line, put it on a train, and it goes off to Timbuktu. And same thing comes back, and they drop something off here in Boise or Nampa or whatever, and then they store the container there until they need it again. What's the difference between something like that that's currently in business and something like this that's much smaller containers?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to respond to that.
Yep.
I can't look at another project without thoroughly looking at the details of that project. Perhaps it's industrial zoning that would make a difference.
Well, it probably is, but so you're saying it's a zoning, that the zoning isn't stipulating that this would be allowed use and we shouldn't change the zoning to allow it to be used this way?
Well, so zoning matters, but it also depends on the location And, whether it's a gateway into our community. So that's another issue. And I don't know, I'd have to look at the specifics there. The other thing is, it may have been a legal non-conforming use that's just existed forever, and we didn't have any restrictions against that.
Okay. Thanks, you didn't help me at all.
Anytime.
So Rodney, does any of the information that was given to us tonight change your opinion on those 3 non-conforming items?
Frankly, again, this is just my analysis. It's
right, but I at least respect your opinion.
So the one thing that I'm struggling with is just the same concepts that was drilled into me from council about using our land for jobs and higher value developments that will cover the cost of servicing those areas. So if there's truck traffic on the roads throughout this area, what's the, are they contributing back into the system to help cover the costs of maintenance of those roads? Are there police and fire that have to come out here to respond to vandalism or whatever? If that's the case, do we cover, are we creating a development that kind of offsets the costs to the city? I don't know specifically, but that was a big concern for them.
But that goes along with something that's developed and is permanent, I think addresses those concerns. But we're already providing the services to this piece of property. And I don't want to get into a whole lot of detail until after a public hearing or whatever, but.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, you started it.
I was just wondering, well, I guess, did you, well, maybe the question is, did you talk to this applicant since Thursday when new information was available, and did you update these conclusions based on that, or are these conclusions based on maybe outdated information?
Well, so the information that I've gotten has just been mostly in the last couple of days. Right? So I'm trying to update it as much as I can on here, but the conclusions, I think the other conclusion that is still a concern is, does this highlight our gateway into our downtown? Is that our comprehensive plan clearly states that Garrity is a gateway into our downtown, and we want to enhance that. Granted, I mean, I could kind of go either way on this, but I just look at those 2 situations, our council's direction, the comprehensive plan's concerns, and the comprehensive plan's goal about getting greater economic development along these corridors. And I think those are still valid concerns.
So these conclusions you have here are current?
They're current, yeah.
Rodney, let me ask another question, please. Some weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, you and I had a discussion about these boxes in the neighborhoods because people were just parking them in their driveways and leaving them there. Mm-hmm. You said that City Council was evaluating or reviewing how to handle these boxes and whether they should be allowed in neighborhoods if they're on private property, or because they're eyesores. I mean, I don't like driving down my neighborhood. My neighbors have got some of these boxes, not from this particular company, but from another company. It's the same difference.
Yeah.
It makes the neighborhood look tacky. So part of that, could City Council review the whole scheme of things, the whole from A to B to Z as to what's going on, and give you a chance to give some input and come up with a plan for how to handle these things, including the storage of the boxes when they're empty?
It could, but it might end up just like the conversation about RVs and driveways.
We could workshop it.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I think that, there's a lot of complexity to that question, but I think you're right in that our code actually addresses that. It's whether we enforce it. That's a hard thing to enforce. And do we need to enforce it if it's only for a couple of days as they're moving or something? We don't want to get so strict that that becomes, targeting people for moving. Yeah, but
Remodeling, yeah, we're kind of.
But most of them aren't moving. I mean, they've been sitting in their neighborhoods for months. They're there all the time. They use it because they got this 3-car garage full of junk, so they have no place else to park their car, so they rent one of these things, put the junk from the garage into the box, and then put the car in the garage.
I would say that that's probably a code enforcement challenge, and we need to address that through code
Or a
enforcement.
neighborhood association.
Refocus on the property. I think let's move on to public testimony unless anybody has other questions about the, what pertaining to the staff report.
Nope, let's go.
All right. So anybody in the audience that would like to speak on, or let's just see if there's a sign-up sheet first, sorry.
No, Mr.
Stole your
Chair,
thunder.
sign up.
Okay. So no sign-up sheet. Anybody would like to testify or speak on behalf, for, against, or undecided on the application? Are you speaking on for it? No, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Is there anybody here that wants to speak for, against, or undecided on this? Okay. So if the applicant wants to come back up, if we have questions, okay, come on up. You can do that.
Yeah. Well, my name's Ty Pullman. I'm replacing Chase Hyde. I'm one of the owners of both the businesses. I live in Meridian. Is that good for the record?
Address, please.
Okay, so
Your address.
5285 West Maggio Drive, Meridian, 83646. I just want to make sure you're clear on how we're using the property. So the manufactured homes that we showed would be along Garrity, which is a permitted use. The containers are behind a 6-foot vinyl fence in the back of the property, which wouldn't really even be seen from the road. So to your point of trying to beautify Garrity, I agree. I want a beautiful piece of property with, you saw the modern look to our homes. They meet a really sleek design, and I think a lot of people would be turning heads at that product. They wouldn't even see the containers in the back. You can see it's just a small piece. So I really wanted to address that. I also want to address this is not going to be a self-storage property. Customers are not coming to the property to access the container. We're not going to have people coming and going at odd hours. It's simply just putting those boxes in the back of the property behind a fence, out of sight. Most of the property is going to be used for the permitted use of manufactured home sales. So I just wanted to address that and be clear on that for the record.
Quick question, do you stack them too high, or?
We could, but in this design, we just have them one, yeah.
How tall are they?
8 feet.
8 feet. Is the whole site paved?
No, so the site is gravel.
The whole site's gravel?
Yeah, and we're not developing, so,
Right.
yeah.
No, I understand.
The back site or the whole site?
The whole site's gravel, yeah.
I couldn't tell from the aerial. That's why I
It looks
asked.
paved to me.
Yeah, it looks good.
I haven't driven in there.
So, and there's already landscape buffer that's installed. I mean, you can see there's grass and trees, so we already have the landscape there on Garrity to go along with the beautifying of Garrity, so. Yeah.
Sorry.
Other questions?
Go ahead.
Now that the applicant kind of is back up here, but how many will you be able to store on that property? Is that the number there that you have?
Of containers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can see we might be able to put in another row. Our main operation is in Garden City. That's Boise Box.
So what would be the maximum number of storage boxes you would have on that site, or could have on that site?
I mean, I guess I'd have to count them. Maybe 40, 50, really pushing it.
Okay.
All behind the fence.
Okay. So,
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Anybody else like to speak for, against, or undecided on this application? All right, applicant, you want to come back up here? Anything to add, Mr. Butler?
Just a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
I've been doing this a long time. I feel for Rodney, he didn't get a detailed application. I feel for you. I don't like these situations where you're trying to make decisions basically off the cuff, but I hope you make a good decision for us. So I wanted to say a couple things. So the area in the back is 11,500 square feet. If you were to develop it as office or retail, your typical development lot coverage is about 20 feet, 20%. So if you're thinking you're losing a building, you're only losing 2,000 square feet. And then this area is in the back. If this doesn't happen, then it gets sold to a used car lot and it stays that. We thought this would be nice. I think, and I said it before, that I think it'll look nicer having these cool homes along the front than the cars. So having said that, I would want to offer a few other conditions maybe if you want to consider, because I heard some things brought up. For instance, maximum of 50 of the Boise box, a condition that no shipping containers be on site, because I think it would be horrible if, let's say, he ended up selling this to somebody and you didn't have what you expected to have, these nice Boise boxes versus shipping containers. That'd be fine with us. And could you put up, oh no, this is fine. Could you put up the one that shows the residential behind this big building here? Oh, this is fine. So just to clarify that there's a huge building right here that's not being removed that provides a buffer to the residential that's there. So I think we're well buffered. The last thing is basically a deal breaker. If you require the whole site to be paved, it's just better off leaving it as a car lot, because it's not just asphalt. As you know, it's asphalt, it's drainage, it's, what's your sub-base, you have to go down a foot, you have to put in pit run, and then 3/4 on top of that. It's just a major change. If you feel that your code says you have to do that, I guess you're forced to, but I don't understand how not increasing the intensity of a use, in other words, we're not increasing the intensity of the use, could trigger development requirements. So I just throw that out to you. My experience has been, if a use is changing, but the use is not increasing in intensity, it doesn't trigger requirements. But then again, you guys make that decision, and I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to give you my thoughts. So paving would be a killer for the project, and we just keep it as a used car lot and sell it as that.
Chairman, quick question. On that property where you want to put these boxes and those vehicles that are parked there now, what vehicles are those?
Those are vehicles for sale.
Okay. And that's on a gravel?
It's all a gravel. It's a compact gravel. I thought it was paved too, but
Recycled asphalt.
it's recycled asphalt that's compacted.
But that's part of the commercial enterprise that's going on right there now anyways, right?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else I need to address? And again, I apologize to Rodney. I really do. I mean,
Send them.
I would have had 10 meetings with him before this.
Thanks.
And keep in mind that letter from the Idaho Transportation Department. If you can make that change, that'd be awesome, because we want to work with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rodney, what's the possibility of tabling this and you guys, city council, and get together your staff and work out a real, this is.
It's going to take forever.
Take forever.
It will just about.
I can see both sides of the issue here, and I'm really on top of the fence, and I don't know which way to fall off.
So a couple of things, Mr. Chair. This is the first time I've seen that site plan tonight. So that, I understand his point there. It is blocking a lot of what's happening in the rear of the property. To have only 20% versus half the property, that's a significant difference from what was originally discussed. The other aspect is, I just looked up the code, and it says that there are exceptions to paving for a parking area screened from view of the public right-of-way in a commercially or industrially zoned property that provides exterior storage or vehicle access. So there is that exception. So there's, as long as it's screened from view, that's okay. I guess.
That only helps with the back 20%.
Correct, yeah. So if there's conditions like that you want to place as a condition of approval, this would be your opportunity. That's up to you. Because he's right, I can't force the paving of the property because it's already existing as a commercial property right now. But he's requesting that it come before you and get approval for a conditional use permit. You can place conditions on that property. So those are some of the things you're going to have to deal with. And if you direct me to, or if you continue this and we meet again and we discuss some of these things, I mean, I think you have all of the same information I'm going to have now to make the decision at a later point.
That's what I was wondering, is if you needed more time, but no, good. Can you go back to your
do we want to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, we got a motion by Commissioner Morgan, waiting for a second.
Second.
Okay, second from Kirkman. To close public hearing, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Public hearing's closed.
Sorry, my apologies. I thought we were moving on down the road. No, just forward a little bit where you had the highlighted reasons for your denial. Yeah. So, man, a lot of things I wanted to. I respectfully disagree with Director Ashby's reasons because it doesn't jive. I know the City Council's direction as far as public storage units, but their concern with that does not fit this. It's a round peg being pounded into a square hole kind of a thing for me. Whether or not storage units, these storage boxes are stored on that parcel, or it doesn't make any difference, really. I mean, they're going to store cars on that parcel. They're going to store something on that parcel, whether it's storage boxes or cars or whatever. The fact that they're not permanent, that's a huge thing for me, that they're mobile. They're going to be moving back and forth. I mean, they got to have some place to put them. I'd rather that they say Nampa box on them rather than Boise box, but that's just me.
Thought about that, too.
We can put that as a condition. But, and going to the greater economic development and using these commercial parcels to enhance that greater economic development, I think contrary to what Director Ashby was saying, or reasons of, I think that it does enhance it more than not having the boxes there. I mean, however, if it's creating one job or two jobs or three jobs, it's more than what's going on there now. I mean, that's how I look at it. And as far as the services that the city provides, we already provide those services to this place. So, it's not being developed to the point where they're going to have to add more city services. I don't think a truck hauling a Boise box on Garrity is going to tear up the road so much that we have to replace it in like the big Connex trucks that are moving back and forth. So I respectfully disagree. But it's tough because it's such a gray area, and I think that's why the code says we leave it up to the planning director, to kind of make that decision. But I appreciate you bringing the information forward, but.
Let's see what the other guys have got to say about this.
Well, I'm ending. Let me put my period on it. Period. Now you can.
The other end of the table down there.
I'm against it. And I think simply because if it was to stay a used car lot, so be it, right? But if they're changing the use, they're going to something different, it is a major corridor, right? And I think that a lot of Garrity Boulevard is an eyesore. And so if you wanted to change it to beautify it because it is one of the gateway corridors, you got to start somewhere, right? And so if you want to leave it as a used car lot, okay, that's fine. But if we're changing it, this is our opportunity to say, this is our priority, that it needs to be a gateway corridor, and so we need to change it. And so for those reasons, I mean, it's great. I mean, storage the boxes, great. I get it, but I just don't, because of, for me, the criteria that it has to meet for the conditional use permit, I don't think it meets it, for me.
So, excuse me, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Garner, so I hear what you're saying, but the change is not permanent. If they were building permanent storage units on that site, it would be a completely different story for me. But since it's just, for me, I'm just looking as a temporary use. And as far as increasing, adding a few jobs here and there, it's not changing the makeup of Garrity Boulevard at all. It's still going to be screened from what the use is currently. You might see 2 feet of a top of a storage box, but it's not changing it. It's not permanent.
No, but they're coming in and they're saying, hey, we want to do this, and the city's saying, no, but you need a conditional use permit. And because they need that conditional use permit, they needed our permission to do it. And for me, it's like, yeah, it's temporary, but it's just kicking the can down the road a little farther, right?
There's nobody going into that spot to change anything. It's just
Well, no, not right now, because they're trying to do this. And like I said, if they wanted to leave it as a used car lot, then we can't do anything about that. But right now, they're coming in saying, hey, we want to do this, and the city's saying, well, that's not, you're going to have to get a conditional use permit, right? And the conditional use permit provides for us the leeway to be able to say, does it meet the criteria?
I agree.
Yeah. And so for me, I just don't think that it meets the criteria because of the city's stated goal of having a gateway corridor.
And I like what you're saying because I hadn't thought about it that way, but when you mention it, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with what the city wants to do, and I agree that this is a better way of doing it by not making it look junkier or whatever. Yeah, we have car lots all over the place, but they're not big square boxes that say Boise on them.
And I don't even, the boxes myself, they're going to be screened. I could care less about the boxes. I'm talking about, mobile homes, and it's just not, I mean, when you're talking about a gateway business area, I don't see mobile homes as being what you want to put out there
It's
for
already
myself.
a permitted use, though.
Yeah, it's a permitted use.
They can put them out there without having to even come to us. They're coming to us for that back part as a CUP. So the mobile homes is a non-issue.
Do they need a CUP for storage and rental of, or sale and rental of the storage containers on the back 20%?
So
Technically?
Mr. Chair, the reason they're coming before you for a CUP is because I looked at it and I said, I'm not sure where this fits exactly.
Okay.
And then code gives me the ability and encourages me to require a CUP to come before you because it's not real clear. So as far as like storage of equipment and things like that, we require that be associated with a business, a primary business, and that be screened from view. And typically that would require a really nice fence and everything around those things. But because this is its own unique land use and it's not associated with the other land use on the property, it's just different. It's one that I couldn't figure out where to put it on our land use table. And so that's why it's before you today.
So, Matt, to your comments, this reminds me of maybe, I don't remember how long ago, it seems like it was maybe last year, when they were wanting to do a used car lot somewhere downtown on the boulevard.
Yes.
Like it was that old hotel or something.
Hotel.
Yeah, and we kind of had the same thought that it's not exactly what we want to see on the boulevard. We don't need more car dealerships on the boulevard. But since they weren't redeveloping anything, and it was something to use the land for something until somebody comes in and actually develops it. It seems like there's a lot of parallels with that.
That was approved.
To this, and I think it should have been approved. It's kind of like, do we wish they were doing some really big development that made it look pretty on Garrity Boulevard? We do.
Yeah.
That would be great, but they're not. It's not. I mean, I guess it is different, where you're swapping out used cars for manufactured homes, which is both an approved use. And I honestly don't think anybody is going to notice those boxes behind that fence. And I understand why we're here, because it's not in a clear category of any uses, and so I don't think you're going to say those boxes look out of place in front of all that quality stacks of chopped up lumber and everything. And that doesn't bother me either, I like quality. But, so, I don't think we can force them to beautify Garrity when they're not really changing anything. When somebody comes and redevelops that site, that's when we should make it look good for Garrity. That's kind of my thoughts on the matter.
I just hate, because it could go either way, and I appreciate you bringing up that example of, when that car lot down there because that is a similar, but because of that, and there's so much ambiguity and gray area, I just don't want to see the applicant, because there is a human factor to this. It's not just a lot on Garrity. There is a human factor to this. I mean, I want to see him be able to increase his business and make a living and that kind of a thing, and bring a few jobs to Nampa, and if that'll help, if that's the tipping point for some, then great. But I don't see any change in the makeup of Garrity if they were to bring in Boise boxes and put on that back lot, or if they did.
But I understand the sensitivity because I hate self-storage units.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fire.
Well, with the CUP, if somebody complains about it, I guess we go.
No, we gotta be too.
Yeah, and I think that also answers his other comment about not allowing other kind of shipping containers. Because, I mean, the CUP goes with this applicant, right? So if he sells it, it's not like somebody else can come and bring shipping containers or something. So I don't see that as.
Runs with the land.
So actually, a conditional use permit does run with the land.
Oh, it does?
It does,
Sorry.
unless you
Unless we
restrict it.
specifically say.
Yeah.
And maybe we could do
Could
that.
we do that then? And in that way, he gets what he wants and we get what we want, so to speak.
For the next, I mean, it ends if he sells the property.
Yeah, he
We
sells
can
the
do that.
property.
We've done that
or-
before.
You have, and that's a potential.
I think it's appropriate here because, yeah.
But I think you need to get with
Eventually-
city council, and we need to address this issue about these people's boxes.
It's completely separate from this.
Well, I don't know, if they weren't allowed to have the boxes in your driveway, then they wouldn't have the boxes, because they would build someplace to store the boxes.
No, that's a completely separate issue.
No, it's the same, it's all in the same category.
Yeah, I think we'll get our chance to redevelop this piece. If they were putting storage boxes in the whole property, different story, right?
Yeah.
I'm in favor of it if I have to break a tie.
So if we just put on a condition that the CUP ends with the sale of the property, and it has, the storage containers are just on that back 20%.
It's in favor of this owner.
What's that?
It's in favor of this owner only.
Yeah, would that make everybody feel okay about this, or what else do we need to do?
And I think we just ensure that they limit it to just, they don't double stack them.
We could max.
Yeah, I agree, no double stacking.
We could maximize 50 units.
But
I don't know if I even
Single-
want to do
single
that.
stacked.
Yeah. Just, I'd rather just, I don't care how many boxes as long as it doesn't stack them.
Okay.
That's just me.
No, I agree. I just want to stay away from the double stack.
Yeah.
I don't know, what do you guys think? Would that help everybody but Matt feel good about this?
Sure.
You're good.
Okay, I'll make an attempt and you guys can fix the motion. I move that we approve the conditional use permit for an unlisted land use for rental or sale of storage containers in a BC zoning district at 03602 and 3610 Garrity Boulevard, totaling 1.39 acres for Chase Hyde, representing Sunshower Holdings LLC, William T. Brown. And, oh shoot, we got to fix a lot of the conditions. And adopt the proposed conditions, except, again, you guys fix these if you don't like how I say it, that the applicant shall meet all the requirements, Idaho Transportation Department for access and advertising in the right-of-way, and that the applicant shall screen the storage containers from view with the existing fence.
And then this,
Well, not double stack them.
That the applicant, and then additional comments that, and that 9 through 14 are stricken? Stricken.
strict.
Got it.
It's actually 8 through 13 because I added 8, so.
8 through 13 are stricken and replaced with the one I just said about the transportation department. We added the other one about the fence and an additional condition of limiting the boxes to be single, so no stacking of the boxes, and that the storage of the boxes are limited to the 20% of the area as presented, and that the CUP dies, goes away.
Ends with the sale of the property.
Ends with the sale of the property.
And then also.
Well, wait, property or business, because you can, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you can sell the property or not sell the property, but keep the business.
With this, yeah, the sale of,
The business.
nobody else can stack boxes there.
Besides Boise Box.
How's that?
Okay.
No, I'm just saying the whole,
This is for Boise box only.
And then we had talked about adding the driveway.
Okay, and I guess we got to add findings too now, right? Since the findings in the report, or
You do.
can we just say as stated in our discussion?
You could, maybe just re-emphasize some of those, but can we just I just want to make sure I've got all the conditions correctly. I think I heard what you said, and then you didn't say total of 50 boxes, but you said
No.
limited to the 20% of the property as
Property and no
proposed.
stacking them.
And no stacking. Did you say no shipping containers?
No, we just say the CUP
Just the Boise
is for
box.
Boise box.
Okay. And I think I've got the rest. So the CUP remains only for the Boise Box LLC. They're not double stacked, and it only covers the 20% area as proposed.
Yes, and then can you go back to the motion?
Yes.
Please.
We don't need to add anything about the driveway because that's already an exception in the statute.
We'll say because the use is not significantly changed from the previous use, and we find that the conditions of that would be triggered by development are not applicable here. Is that the right way? Okay. Amen.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think I got it.
We have a motion by Commissioner Morgan and a second by Commissioner Daffer to approve the conditional use permit with additional conditions and stated findings per the motion. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
I heard
Any
it.
opposed? Any opposed? Okay,
Just
unanimous.
say it louder,
The
doesn't
motion carries.
it? Want to make sure.
Approved. Thank you for
You earn your money tonight, Mr. Butler.
your help, Mr. Butler.
Isn't there some line about appeals you gotta read or something?
Thank you, by the way. Thank you all very much.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Where's the thing? I don't
There is that CUP.
Memorized.
Oh, yeah.
I got it.
Selman has it memorized.
Oh, almost. Oh, gosh.
Hold on, you're not done.
Legally read something.
It becomes effective 15 calendar days from the date of the hearing, unless somebody appeals it, like Rodney. Just kidding. Don't put that on the record. So unless there's an appeal that's been filed with P&Z with the appropriate fee, no action, don't take any action until you have confirmed that there has been no appeals filed. And you contact them to make sure. Okay, cool. Thank you.
So if I drive by there tomorrow on the way to work and I see a bunch of Boise boxes out there on the.
Yeah,
I'm gonna call
15
Rodney.
days.
15 days.
Every time I did the slide with Boise Box, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, change the name to Nampa.
Okay, thank you.
very much.
Yep, have a good night. Last item on the agenda is a comprehensive plan. No, these are my favorite ones.
Yeah.
Comprehensive plan text and future land use map amendment to change agricultural land use title to very low density land use title for the city of Nampa. Doug, you're the applicant
Make it short and sweet.
and the staff report. That seems like a conflict of interest. You can sit and do it from there if you want, unless you want to get up here.
No, thank you, Chairman Ucker, I'll stay here.
Okay.
So this is a recommendation to council. This was recommended earlier this year when we came to you with an area of impact change. And we were proposing at that time to go south of Deer Flat Road. And we had several people in the audience, mostly farmers, who were concerned about the title agricultural for this land use designation. And they were concerned about the change to very low density residential. We brought that when we brought the area of city impact to Canyon County for their approval. They approved it with the condition that we request that we change the title back to very low density, or to very low density residential, because the county's definition of agricultural was being confused with the comprehensive plan's definition of agricultural. And the difference between the two is that the county allows for larger lots. In fact, the smallest lot that they'll allow is a 2-acre lot. The smallest lot that we will allow in the very low density residential agricultural uses, it is termed now, is 1 acre. So it was creating some confusion for elected officials as well as developers and landowners. So they asked that we bring this back to you to request that name change in our future land use map. And just a couple of places, so this is the future land use map. This is all that would change on that map. And then there's a couple of places in the comprehensive plan. In the definition in 551. In 552, there's a reference to it for the low-density residential information, or the title. And then in Exhibit 5.5, again, that's just a name change, and Exhibit 5.3, and again, that's just a name change. We think that this fits. It brings the definition of what's currently agricultural. It brings it into, there's more continuity between the title name and the definition of what that means, that land use definition. And so there are some findings in state code that allows the commission and requires the commission to review and update the comprehensive plan. To do this, it requires a little bit of an analysis of the natural land types out there. So a couple of things that we came up with. The change is a result of a partnership between Canyon County and the City of Napa to provide clarity to the zoning code and maps. Very low density residential act as a buffer between medium density residential and ecologically sensitive areas. The soils out there are a mix of best to least suited for irrigation, which is a good location for rural and low density housing. And that mining pits in the areas provide opportunities for future reclamation and residential development. So all of these reasons point back to the reason that we're requesting this name change to reflect more of what could happen in these areas. So let me go back to the original map. So on the original future land use map, the green areas are the areas that we would recommend changing the name to. These are near the Boise River and down near Lake Lowell. So they're ecologically sensitive areas. There's not much development in these areas. There is some low density, very low density residential development down near Lake Lowell in this area. It's starting to develop this way, and so it would be consistent with what's happening on the site in these areas. And there's a soils map that was in your staff report. Down near Lake Lowell, the soils are best suited to moderately suited, with some least suited areas. So these are areas that you don't want to have heavy residential or dense residential develop on. And so this would, again, contribute to the type of development. The name would identify the type of development that we want to encourage in this area. And up near the Boise River, this is least suited. This is class 5 soils largely up here. It's because of the floodplain and so forth. This is area that you would probably want to have denser housing on, but because of its proximity to ecologically sensitive area, this is an area that you probably would want to preserve with lots of open space in this area and have cluster type of housing. Again, that would provide for. So that's the motion this evening, and I'd be glad to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Critchfield? Thank you. We will go ahead and move to, but that covers your staff report, right?
Yeah, that was a step.
Okay, so public testimony for this item. We'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody signed up?
No, Mr. Chair, there is no.
Shocking. Okay. Anybody in the audience that would like to speak on, for, against, or undecided on this application? Okay. Seeing none,
Move we close public hearing.
Second.
great. We have a motion from Commissioner Kirkman and a second from Selman to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, public hearing's closed.
Second.
All right, a motion by Commissioner Daffer, second by Kehoe, who's leaving, apparently.
Halfway out the door.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. And
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Commissioner Selman, always with the motion to adjourn, and a second by Kehoe, who's gone. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. So good to be here at past 9:30.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had a late one.